number 2 of 2018, the Copyright Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 33 of 2017, and the County Outdoor Advertising Control Bill, Senate Bills number 19 of 2018. Those bills will be debated in the Committee of the Whole House, where some amendments will be considered. The Statutory Instrument Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 24 of 2018, is also active in the House, and the last time this bill was debated was the 27th day of November 2018. If the members will be able to clear the business that precedes this particular bill, then that debate will resume. The County Law Compliance and Enforcement Bill, Senate Bills number 25 of 2018, is scheduled for second reading, as well as 3 other bills. The County Early Childhood Education Bill, Senate Bills number 26 of 2018, the County Oversight and Accountability Bill, Senate Bills number 28 of 2018, and the County Statutory Instruments Bill, Senate Bills number 21 of 2018. Those bills are scheduled for the second reading. Debate on them is yet to begin. And also in the order of business this afternoon, a number of motions, one by the County Public and Investment Committee, the other will be by the Senator Sylvia Kasanga, a nominated senator, and she will be moving a motion on the remedies for closure of schools due to floods and instances of insecurity. If you're just joining us, these are live pictures from the Senate chambers where the business of the House is about to begin. On your screen is the mace, followed by the Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Kenneth Makelo Lusaka. This broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with KBC. My name is Edward Kabasa. Good afternoon.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings as your servants whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberations in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon of visiting members and staff from the County Assembly of Kisii. I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that they may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. They are Honorable Paul Angwenyi, Chairperson, Committee on Delegated Legislation; Honorable Caroline Otachi, Member; Honorable Naomi Bosire, Member; Honorable Bilasia Nyakoe, Member; Honorable Bernard Nyagaka, Member; Honorable Samuel Nyambeki, Honorable Zablon Mokua, Member; and Ms. Naomi Ogero, Committee Clerk. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Senator Haji Farhia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to join you in welcoming the delegation from Kisii. Since being a counterpart delegation, I just wanted to congratulate them to see that this is a house where serious issues are deliberated and serious learning can take place. Mr. Speaker, sir, they were also in our meeting this morning, and there are a lot of issues we discussed with them. And I think that is the right way to go if knowledge and in terms of benchmarking, in terms of the serious issues that are discussed in any house, then they will learn and replicate the same in their chamber. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Langat Christopher.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me also to welcome the delegation from Kisii County, who are my neighbors. In fact, when I was requesting Senator Professor Ongeri, who is my great friend and a neighbor, was coming, and therefore I would have wanted to welcome them on his behalf as a good neighbor. I want to say that when we were in Kisii, Mr. Speaker, we were really welcome with a lot of hospitality. And I want to say Kisii County is one of my great neighbors. They are good people to stay with. And I want to tell them, welcome to the Senate and welcome again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Haneri George.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity. They are not necessarily my neighbors, but Mr. Speaker, I was born in Kisii. By the time I was born, my father was working in Kisii for the tea industry, and he's very well known there. Mr. Speaker, I want to join you in welcoming the distinguished delegation from the Kisii County Assembly, and just to encourage them that you are benchmarking from the best. You are our greatest partners in devolution. We rely on you fully to ensure that devolution works in terms of providing oversight to the county governments. You are our first line of defense. We channel so much money to our counties, and as a Senate, we are fighting even to give you more money in the counties. But we want to see the common mwananchi benefiting from these resources that we channel to you in the counties. And therefore, that's now where your role comes in, to make sure that there is prudent use of every penny that comes to the county. So welcome to Nairobi. We wish you a fruitful stay in the city of Nairobi. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ongeri Samson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me also add my voice to welcome to the Kisii County Assembly members and the staff for being here benchmarking on delegated legislation. They've come at a time when I think we've been talking around the capacity building of our county assemblies to be able to be equal to the challenges that arise on resource allocation. I sit in the Public Accounts Committee, and it's indeed important that they're here to see what role they can be able to play in ensuring that when they pass the CIDP, when they pass the annual development plan, and eventually when they pass the budget, that these resources do find their way down to the projects, and they are in a better position to be able to appreciate and assess the impact that those projects have had within their area of operations and within the county itself. I think optimum and optimal utilization of resources is the main thing that we're all fighting for. So we can continue fighting for more resource allocation as they continue ensuring that those resources are put into profitable service, so that we can ask for value for money, and it can be readily available. I thank you, and I hope that you will enjoy your stay here, and this is the way we handle our business. And then I think as you sit along, that you'll be able to learn one or two things from you. And soon we shall also be visiting you in your county assemblies to see how you are performing. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity of welcoming the Kisii County delegation here.
Next order.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Leader of majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, 28th November 2018. One, the report of the assumption of the Office of the President Committee pursuant to Section 19 of the Assumption of the Office of President Act. 2, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Mombasa County Elimu Fund for the year ended 30th June 2017. I thank you.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Okay, next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Chair, Standing Committee on Health.
Standing Order 51-1B provides that at least every 3 months, a committee chairperson is expected to make a statement relating to activities of the committee. And in fulfillment of this provision, I wish to make a statement in regards to the Senate Standing Committee on Health for the period commencing 9th of August 2018 to 9th of November 2018. Honorable Speaker, the Senate Standing Committee on Health, constituted in December 2017, during the first session of the 12th Parliament, pursuant to the provisions of Senate Standing Order 218, the committee is mandated to consider all matters related to medical services, public health, and sanitation. Honorable Speaker, as outlined in Standing Order 215-2, the activities of the committee shall entail the following. 1, bills considered by the committee. 2, statements considered by the committee. 3, petitions considered by the committee. Inquiries undertaken by the committee. Any county visits undertaken by the committee and the outcome of such visits. The manner and extent to which the committee met its public participation obligations in respect to the business of the committee. Understanding Order 218-4, the committee is expected to scrutinize resolutions of the Senate and formal undertakings given by the National Executive. Honorable Speaker, during the period under the review, the committee has held a total of 8 sittings. Honorable Speaker, on reporting on the activities of the committee, I wish to provide the details of each activity as follows. 1, bills considered by the committee. No bills have been considered by the committee. The committee is, however, following keenly on the Health Laws Amendment Act, which the National Assembly has just concluded, and we shall be looking forward to the bill being submitted to the committee. 2, legislative proposals processed by the committee. Mr. Speaker, during the period, the committee had a pre-publication scrutiny on the Mental Health Amendment Act. The bill has since been published, and we look forward to the bill being committed to our committee after the first reading. Statements considered by the committee. Mr. Speaker, during the period, the committee received statements from Senator John Sakaja regarding the state of Pumwani Hospital. On 19 September 2018, together with the Committee on National Security, the committee visited Pumwani Maternity Hospital. There had been a national outcry after it was alleged that 12 bodies belonging to babies had been found stuffed in boxes. During the visit, a number of issues emerged. 1, Pumwani Hospital is handling a larger capacity than it was meant to. This was evident with babies sharing incubators. 2, the hospital does not have a cold room or mortuary. This means that if there is a mortality in the hospital, bodies are kept in boxes. 3, the incinerator has not been working since June 2018. This meant that the disposal of hazardous materials was not happening. Additionally, those assigned the task of working in the incinerator did not have the right protective equipment. This posed a health hazard to their life. 4, the county government of Nairobi was operating with an acting CEC of health since the substantive CEC had been suspended. Following the visit of the Committee of the National Security and Health, it was resolved to have a joint sitting in which they would invite the governor of the Nairobi County and the administrators of Pumwani Maternity Hospitals. So I've listed in my statement some actions to be taken, and the visit to Pumwani Hospital is planned. Inquiries are undertaken by the committee. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the period, the committee has engaged the Ministry of Health to inquire about the medical equipment program implementation on the Health Act and universal health coverage. Mr. Speaker, with reference to the medical equipment program, let me go on record and indicate that the committee was against the increase of funding for medical equipment from 6.1 billion in the financial year 2018 to 9.2 billion for the financial year 2018-2019. Additionally, the committee has inquired from the CS about the medical equipment program, and this has culminated to the CS being invited to address the committee on the whole on November 17th, 2018. Mr. Speaker, the committee has inquired about the implementation of the Health Act 2017. The committee has been informed that the position of Director General of Health will be filled by the end of December 2018, and a multi-sectoral technical working group has been formed to facilitate implementation of the Health Act. The committee will continue to push the Ministry of Health to ensure that the Health Act has been implemented. Mr. Speaker, the committee has been following up on the implementation of the UHC, one of the big 4 programs. The committee was informed by the Ministry of Health that 4 counties have been chosen for the pilot process. The four counties include Machakos, Isiolo, Nyeri, and Kisumu. Let me report that the committee was never involved by the ministry in the UHC process. The committee has its concerns on the sustainability of the program in its current form because it will require counties to match what the national government allocates. 6 county visits undertaken by the committee. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the period the committee visited West Pokot County. In particular, the committee visited Kapenguria Hospital. The purpose of the visit was as a result of a petition by the residents of Kapenguria. The committee thanks the governor of West Pokot for his hospitality during the visit. Stakeholder engagements. Mr. Speaker, the committee has interacted with Non-Communicable Disease Alliance of Kenya, NCDs being a big burden in our country, Kenya. NCDs include diseases like cancer, diabetes, hypertension, etc. The NCDs in this country should be classified as a national disaster. The committee interaction has resulted in a bill on processed sugar and alcohol being drafted. On challenges, Mr. Speaker, our main challenge was with the national government and especially the Ministry of Health, and we look forward to working closely with them. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, mine, as you would expect, is a bit lengthy because my committee is extremely busy and we have dealt with many things. So I will try and summarize, but the report shall be tabled and will be available for all senators and indeed the public to be able to see. I'll skip the preliminaries. Of course, we know the committee, Mr. Speaker, is established under our standing orders, Standing Order 218, and its mandate is to consider all matters relating to manpower and human resources planning, pension, gender, culture and social welfare, youth, national youth service, children's welfare, national heritage, betting, lotteries, sports, public entertainment, public amenities, and recreation. The mandate is very wide. As outlined in Standing Order 215, activities of the committee include, the brief shall entail the bills that have been considered by the committee in this session, the statements considered, the petitions, the inquiries that we've made as a Committee of Labor and Social Welfare, the county visits that we've been able to do, and we've done quite a number. I can see Senator Fokwale nodding, we've been to his county. The manner and extent to which we have met our public participation obligation, which is a very important part of our work as a Senate and Parliament in its entirety, in respect of business of this committee. And then, of course, the resolutions of the Senate, directions from your chair, and formal undertakings given by the National Executive. We must be able to scrutinize those, and we'll give a report. Mr. Speaker, under this period of review, we've held a total of 25 sittings. We've held a retreat, and we've engaged with very many stakeholders who will be listed in the report. Let me give details of the activities. In terms of bills, we've considered a number of bills. We've considered the Retirement Benefits Deputy President and Designated State Officers Bill, Amendment number 2 of 2018. This bill we conducted public hearing. We had very many people coming and giving us their opinions. The report by the committee was tabled on the 18th of October 2018. Mr. Speaker, we've also considered for publication the Care and Protection of Older Members of Society Bill, Number 17, this one is sponsored by Senator Aaron Cheriot. The previous one is sponsored by the Senator for Narok, Ledamo Lekina. The public hearing was held. There was a very huge number of people who came on this issue of care. The bill successfully went through the second stage, and it is due for committee of the whole, just as the retirement benefits. Mr. Speaker, the committee has also sponsored a bill on county government retirement scheme. That is the first bill we've sponsored as a committee. That one is scheduled for committee of the whole. But Mr. Speaker, we've stepped it down temporarily because the National Assembly also passed a similar bill on the county government retirement scheme. That bill is before the House. It has gone through first reading. The committee has done its report, and we are engaging with stakeholders. And we hope that we shall be able to expedite and deal with the bill as should be in the coming few days. The legislative proposals that we have processed are mainly the National Museum's Heritage Amendment Bill, and we've held a meeting on that to consider it, and we've responded to your good office, Mr. Speaker, giving it an okay. And normally, Mr. Speaker, the disposition that committees must take when they go through pre-publication scrutiny is not to curtail legislation, but just to address matters of constitutionality. The rest shall be left to the House to determine. We've considered a number of statements, including implementation status of the government set minimum wage guidelines in the country. We've written to the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, and the report will be coming on Thursday. We've engaged with the ministry. Other petitions, and these are statements under the new standing orders. The rest lapsed, but we have also dealt with quite a number. The petitions considered by the committee are quite a number. One is by members from the Abasuba community from Western Kenya on the protection of the Abasuba language, culture, and heritage. It was a very interesting petition, and it's very interesting that none of the senators from that community seemed quite enthusiastic, which just shows the challenge that community is facing with their language and with the assimilation by mainly the Luo community of this country. We recommended the development of a comprehensive policy that takes into consideration stakeholders' input, that promotes indigenous cultures as the Constitution aspires, that will promote these indigenous cultures and languages independent of the education system in extracurricular settings. The petition, in as much as it came from one small community, we looked at it in the holistic nature that we should of all indigenous communities and cultures. There's a petition also brought by Senator Mary Senator by residents of Kaputei North Ward in Kajiado County on non-recruitment of locals by flower farms, institutions, and other companies operating in the ward. It's an issue I know that affects many counties where you find locals are bypassed and others are employed. Mr. Speaker, we've also concluded on that petition. We intended to visit, but we noted that as it is, there is no law regulating private hiring, but we thought through the county government that we can appeal through CSR and through interventions by the Senate that this company is able to hire locals in whichever county, and mainly even even in Nairobi. There's a petition, so we met the petitioners in all those instances. In the earlier one, we met KICD, the Ministry of Education, and the Abasuba team. They have a name they call themselves. Mr. Speaker, there was a petition by residents of Tinderet sub-county, Nandi, on the operations of Karebe gold mining. Mr. Speaker, this petition came during the historic visit, or rather sittings of the Senate in Uasin Gishu. And we asked for it to be rerouted, but we are still, as always, eager to conclude with the same alacrity and energy that the Committee of Labor has. A petition by job applicants, and these are very serious petitions that we are currently dealing with, on clearance, the multiple clearance required by different public bodies for them to apply for jobs in Kenya. Whether it is ESCC, whether it is Credit Reference Bureau, KRA, HELB, we put too many preconditions on young people before they're able to apply for jobs. And finally, Mr. Speaker, a petition by residents of Kajiado County, and I must note that the Senator, Mary Senator, is quite active in bringing petitions to the House. and many of them end up in my committee, but we are very happy with her. This is a petition by residents of Kajiado on delayed salaries and non-remittance of statutory deductions. Mr. Speaker, this is at Nol Turesh, Loitoktok Water and Sanitation. Just like the other petitions, this petition has opened the wider issue of non-remittance by county governments, by public institutions, of pay-as-you-earn, NHIF, NSSF payments for their employees. We've met once on the petition, and we've resolved to invite the petitioners and also to make it wider together with the Public Service Commission and the county government public service boards. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of inquiries. I will go quickly. One was on non-payment of salaries to Betting Control and Licensing Board staff, Mombasa County. We've resolved that. We have had a meeting with the governor of Mombasa County, the speaker, the MCAs, and the CECs, together with Senator Faki, when we came for the county visit. And Senator Faki was really committed and stayed with us even when we went to other counties. Mr. Speaker, he must be applauded. Normally, senators will only welcome me to the county, but Senator Faki was our resident tourist guide, together with Senator Issa of Kwale. And because of that, we were able to conclude on this very important issue, together with the issues of the County Government Workers Union of Kilifi County, with Senator Stuart Madzayo, who's a member of this committee, Kwale County, Senator Issa, and Mombasa County. Mr. Speaker, then there was the issue that is ongoing and we're dealing with on discrimination and victimization of Kenyan workers working on the SGR, Mr. Speaker. And the objective was to find out what government agencies are doing in terms of streamlining the operations. We've held several meetings. We've given undertakings direction by the power vested in this committee by yourself and this House. We've even instructed that all Chinese signage on the SGR be removed, and all these Chinese doing jobs like ushering, doing security, work that Kenyans can do must be done by Kenyans. We've insisted on that. And Mr. Speaker, the committee is concluding on this matter. We're doing a site visit. The problem, Mr. Speaker, was that when we said we'll tell them when we're going, they will hide these wrong things that they do. So we're going to go impromptu. We will just show up and ride the train to Mombasa, and we hope Senator Faki can again welcome us. Mr. Speaker, there's also the petition letter by former locomotive drivers of Kenya Railways to find out why they've not been incorporated into the SGR. We've invited them, very able wazee who are part of the railway and have a lot of experience, and we're waiting for a final report from KRC on the same. County visits, Mr. Speaker, as I've noted, we've done a couple to Mombasa, Kwale, Kilifi in this past quarter. This is just for the last 3 months I hold. And in those meetings, we met county assemblies, we met the county speakers, we met the county governors, we met CECs, we met the county government workers unions, who, Mr. Speaker, for a long time have been not recognized. And Mr. Speaker, on this floor of this House, we gave a directive that because the law says that every county government or every employer must acknowledge and must recognize the workers' union that has the majority of employees of that establishment or institution, we gave a directive that in 14 days that we shall deem all of those unions to have been recognized. Because the reason why governors are not recognizing them is because they don't want to get into CBAs. Finally.
Yeah, I hope you are concluding.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, it is because of the nature of the committee. It's very wide mandate and very hard-working members. Finally, we've done the commendation of Eliud Kipchoge for breaking the world marathon record, one of our honorarium to councillors by Senator Kinyua. We're looking at that, Mr. Speaker, because it's a labor issue as well. Mr. Speaker, allow me not to go through everything and leave it to the public participation that we've done. We have the matters of challenges and recommendations. I think many of these are generic with most committees. And we've given very strong recommendations of what needs to be done. I want to thank the Secretariat led by the clerk of this House, Mr. Speaker. We've seen, and I personally have the experience that I've been in both houses, that the clerks and the staff of the Senate are professional, they're hardworking, they are very helpful. And Mr. Speaker, were it not for the clerks that we have and the staff and the Secretariat, we will not have achieved what we've been able to in this quarter. Mr. Speaker, the rest of the details shall be left with the clerks at the table, including the pending activities that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair of the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Let me now invite the Chairperson, Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I'm presenting a statement relating to the activities of the Senate Studying Committee on Land, Environment, and Natural Resources, pursuant to Standing Order 51. Mr. Speaker, sir, Standing Order 51 1B provides that at least every 3 months, a committee chairperson is expected to make a statement relating to activities of the committee in fulfillment of that provision. I wish to make a statement in regard to the Standing Committee on Land, Environment, and Natural Resources for the period commencing 9th August 2018 to 9th November 2018. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Senate Standing Committee on Lands, Environment, and Natural Resources was constituted in December 2017 during the first session of the 12th Parliament, pursuant to the provisions of Senate Standing Order 218. The committee is mandated to consider all matters relating to lands and settlement, housing, environment, forestry, wildlife, mining, water resource management, and development. Mr. Speaker, sir, as outlined in Standing Order 215-2, the activities of the committee shall entail the following: bills considered by the committee, statements considered by the committee, petitions considered by the committee, inquiries undertaken by the committee, and progress of any such inquiry. Any counter visits undertaken by the committee and the outcome of such visits, and the manner and the extent to which the committee met its public participation obligations in respect of the business of the committee. Under Standing Order 218-4, the committee is expected to scrutinize the resolutions of the Senate and formal undertakings given by the National Executive, including adopted committee reports. Mr. Speaker, sir, in overall, the committee has held a total of 53 sittings and a total of 13 sittings during the period under review, and is currently planning to hold county site visits. The committee has also engaged with several stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, sir, in reporting on the activities of the committee, I wish to provide the details of each activity as follows. Bills considered by the committee. We considered the physical planning bill, and the bill was referred to the committee on 16th May 2018. The committee concluded a public hearing on Thursday, 21st June 2018, and met with the following stakeholders: Council of Governors, County Assemblies Forum, County Assembly of Machakos, County Assembly of Nyandarua, Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee, Kenya Law Reform Commission, Law Society of Kenya, National Gender and Equality Commission. And the status of this bill: the matter was adequately considered and report tabled in the Senate on 24th July 2018. So the matter of this physical planning bill is already completed. Mr. Speaker, sir, we also dealt with the Land Value Index Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2018. The committee conducted public hearing on 3rd October 2018 and met with the following stakeholders: Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning, National Land Commission, the National Environment Management Authority, the Council of County Governors, the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya, and Haki Madini Kenya Limited. Mr. Speaker, sir, the matter was adequately considered and report tabled in the Senate on 4th of November 2018. We have so far completed the work of that bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, we also dealt with natural resources Benefit Sharing Bill 2018. It was given to us, to the committee, on the 31st of May 2018. The committee, in its meeting held on 27th June 2018 and 5th July 2018, met the sponsor and had interactive sessions on the bill and informed the Speaker that he may consider publishing the bill. The committee concluded the matter on 5th July 2018 and completed the matter of this bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, statements considered by the committee were as follows: delayed compensation of displaced persons during the construction of Mulima Dam, Bohoni constituency, Makueni County. The committee, at its meeting held on 20th November 2018, resolved to invite stakeholders responsible for this statement at a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, 29th November. The status of the meeting is that it is in progress and stakeholders have been invited. So we are waiting for the outcome of the meeting tomorrow, the 29th of November. Delayed compensation for displaced persons during the construction of Manoni Dam, Makueni constituency, Makueni County. Mr. Speaker, sir, action taken by the committee is that the committee at its meeting held on 20th November 2018 resolved to invite stakeholders responsible for this statement at a meeting scheduled and to be held tomorrow, 29th November. The Ministry of Agriculture, State Department of Irrigation is expected to come to that meeting. Mr. Speaker, the matter is in progress and stakeholders have been invited, and then we shall report on the report on what will happen in the meeting. Availability and accessibility of water in Nairobi City County. The committee at its meeting held on 28th November 2018 resolved to invite stakeholders responsible for this statement at a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, again, 29th November. The Minister of Water and Sanitation and the CEC in charge of water, Nairobi, have been invited, and we shall give a report after that meeting. Demolition in Nairobi City Council.
You need to be moving towards the conclusion. Huh? So your time is running out.
Mr. Speaker, our committee has a very wide mandate, so I have quite a bit to conclude, but I will not take long. I'll try to summarize. demolition in Nairobi City Council. The committee, at its meeting held on 20th November 2018, resolved to invite stakeholders responsible for this statement at a meeting to be held tomorrow. But I have been called by the minister today, and he told me he may not come because there is a committee, a cabinet committee that is dealing with this matter, and he is not the chairman of the committee. The chairman of the committee is the Minister for Tourism, Honorable Barara. So they will not come for this matter tomorrow, but we'll reschedule it for February when we come back. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is also status of issuance of title deeds for Mwea, the rice farmers in Kirinyaga County. The committee at its meeting held on 20th November 2018 resolved to invite stakeholders responsible for this statement at a meeting scheduled for 4th December. The matter is in progress and we will be visiting Mwea to actually acquaint ourselves with the matter on the ground. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is also a statement on water projects undertaken within the 47 counties. In our meeting on the 20th, we agreed that we invite the Minister of Water and Sanitation on 29th, that's tomorrow, so the Minister is coming tomorrow to respond to the questions put to him by the committee. Then there is the petitions considered by the committee. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have considered the following petitions. Alleged non-operationalization of certain provisions of the Wildlife Conservation and Management Act number 47 of 2013. We considered the matter and the report was tabled to this House. And Mr. Speaker, we also had variation of the boundaries of Nyagweta Forest in South Mugirango Sub-County, Kisii County. We deliberated on this matter and tabled a report to this House. So the matter has been dealt with. The proposed Mitubiri sanitary landfill project in Murang'a County. This matter was dealt with and the report was tabled to this House. Then we had enactment of SIGO legislation on the protection and availability on sustainability management of water resources, water sources, and riparian zones in Kenya. We deliberated on this matter and tabled the report. Mr. Speaker, we had adverse environmental and social effects arising from the construction of Phase 2A of the standard gauge railway Nairobi-Naivasha section. We invited the petitioners, Mr. Speaker. We deliberated on this matter, and we are yet to make a trip from Kajiado to Naivasha so that we can be able to fully determine this matter. But it is in progress, and we have scheduled ourselves to make a trip from Kajiado to Naivasha in the month of January. Mr. Speaker, the other petition was...
How much more time do you want? Because you are obviously...
Mr. Speaker, sir, this committee had 14 petitions. I have dealt with 6 petitions. So I'll finish with the 6 petitions and then perhaps leave the others, table the document so that the members can read.
Yeah, members can read, maybe just go to the conclusion.
Yeah, I can go to conclusion and then table the document. Mr. Speaker, I go to the charges and recommendations that the committee had. Mr. Speaker, sir, quorum has been a real challenge in the committee. It has consistently caused us not to hold meetings when we are supposed to hold meetings. So, Mr. Speaker, we are recommending as a committee that this House reviews the standing orders so that no member of the Senate or no senator should be in more than 2 committees. Because quorum has become a problem in very many committees, and we cannot be able to work with that problem. Mr. Speaker, sir, we also have had witnesses who have ignored invitations and even ignored summons to committees. Mr. Speaker, on this one, we are recommending that the Powers and Privileges Committee should be reviewed, and we put in place punitive methodology so that, and if possible, we put them in jail. Those, who ignore summons. Mr. Speaker, sir, petitions allocated to 2 committees to be carried out jointly with continuously be a challenge. We should not have a petition that is referred to 2 committees because it becomes a problem. We have one petition that we are supposed to deal with jointly with the Committee of Legal, and it is a problem getting the 2 committees together. Sometimes the Lands Committee is ready, but the Legal Committee, there's nobody who appears. We cannot be able to deliberate on this petition at Kerishu because we will not be having the Legal Committee with us, and we are supposed to deliberate on the matter together. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg to table this report on the table of the Senate, and I am here to do so, and I have done so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chair, Land, Environment and Natural Resources. I now want to invite, I don't see Senator Turkana, Senator Wajir Dr. Abdullahi Ibrahim, Senator Mary Yane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 48.1, I rise to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources on the management of water resources in Kajiado County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain the policies, legal and institutional framework governing the water supply and demand in the country. 2, explain the role of the county government in the management of water resources in their respective counties. Mr. Speaker, as you have just heard, the issue of water companies is having a very big conflict with the county governments, not only in Kajiado, but in the whole country. 3, explain the measures put in place by the national government to ensure there is no conflict between the national government and county governments over the management of water resources. 4, state the water supply and demand situation in Kajiado County, particularly in Kitengela Township, and explain what the national government is doing to remedy the situation.
It's committed to the Chair, Land, Natural Resources, Land, Environment, Natural Resources. Okay. Another petition.
We will invite the CS and also invite the senator who has come up with the statement so that she can be answered.
Next is Senator Mary, a statement from Standing Committee on Roads.
Pursuant to Standing Order 48.1, I rise to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads and Transport on the status of Namanga Road. It's an international road that connects Kenya to Tanzania and by extension link Kenya to other countries. The road also serves many transporters, some transporting goods to GKIA and generally to or from Kenya. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain why there are no emergency bridges at Klemedungi River in Kitengela and Ilbisil River along Namanga Road. Yet this is an international road, and any accident or blockage of the already existing bridge would completely render the road impassable. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a very important road. And if there are no emergency roads, we shall experience what we experience along Mombasa Road in Machakos County, where the river the other time flooded and people were not able to go to the other counties. State what measures the Kenya National Highway, KENHA, has put in place to remedy the situation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Chair Committee on Roads. You've noted the petition, the statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have noted the petition. We'll take it, the statement, you'll take it up and we'll get back to the Senator once we get the CS.
Okay, thank you. Next order. What's your point of order, Sakaja Johnson?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I don't know, please clarify whether in these new standing orders we allow riders. Because we have the same problem in Nairobi. A lot of the roads, Mr. Speaker, that have been done, whether it is Outer Ring Road and in many parts, our children are very, under danger of being hit by cars. There are no bridges. Women are indignified jumping over these barriers. We'd like to know the status and what the plan is with these roads. Is it possible?
We will allow you, but
yes,
briefly, okay.
So kindly, Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, the committee should just give us a status, because at some point I heard they were somewhere in Nairobi. Of course, without inviting the senator for Nairobi, they went to Outer Ring Road, they went to Thika Road. I wish they would have invited me to accompany them. Next time, we will welcome them the Nairobi way. But Mr. Speaker, really, it is important for them to also impress upon these authorities that you're not building roads for cars, you're building roads for people. So, Mr. Speaker, when you build roads for people, we want to see bicycle lanes. We want to make sure that there are bridges for people to cross over. Please let us hear the status and what is the design policy that Kena and Kura and all these agencies are employing, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, next order.
Order number 8, the Treaty Making and Ratification Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 23 of 2018, second reading division.
We'll have that order deferred because looking at you don't have the numbers, so it's deferred. And, order number 9 is also deferred. Order number 10, deferred. Yeah. We don't have the chair. We go to which one? Deferred. Order number 11 is also deferred. What's your point of order, Sakaja Johnson?
Mr. Speaker, on order number 11, the sponsor of the bill is here and the chair of the committee is here. We're ready to move it at committee. We have all the amendments ready. Mr. Speaker, if you could kindly, we can get, if there's no other presiding officer, we can get Senator number 1 in standing orders, Khaniri, to sit in. We'll do it very quickly because he understands how to do it. He doesn't have to be in the speaker's panel. He can do it very quickly and finish the amendments. Mr. Speaker, this is for the care of protection of older persons in society.
Senator Nairobi approach the chair. So we'll defer order number 12, 13, and 14, and we go to order number 15.
Order number 15, the Statutory Instruments Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 24 of 2018, second reading.
Senator Cheriot, what is it? Senator Harugura, you are in the process of seconding. You have 12 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let's just like to summarize what my secondment of this bill. Mr. Speaker, for the benefit of the members, the bill is about whenever we make a bill, we normally have some regulations to be made by some particular authority. With the CS, you say that the regulation will be done by the CS. A bill which was passed by this House together with the National Assembly, whatever it contains should be any statutory instrument need to be also checked by this House. But the Statutory Instrument Bill Act 2013 excluded the requirement that Senate also has to look at those statutory instruments before they are passed. And that is where we have problems. And I mentioned the case of the Community Land Act, which we passed together with the National Assembly, but which the regulations which were made by the CS lands did not come to this House. Mr. Speaker, when we passed that law, we expected that the regulations should also be in line with the spirit with which we passed the law. But if the regulations don't come to this House, then it means that somewhere along the line, we are not fulfilling our responsibilities as legislators and also as defenders of counties, because these laws affect counties. If regulations are made which are not in the interest of the counties, then we will not have accomplished our task of defending the interest of the counties and their governments. That is why this amendment was brought, so that we ensure that once a statutory instrument is developed based on a legislation from Parliament, then it's submitted to the two clerks, the clerk of Senate and clerk of National Assembly. That is the first amendment to Section 11. Then to Section 15, it's just the time frame. That is, if the time elapses before the committees finish with the instrument, then each House can extend for a period of 21 days the duration required for the committees to look at that instrument. Mr. Speaker, I second the bill.
Okay, Senator Cheriot. Honorable Senators, I now propose that the Statutory Instrument Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 24 of 2018, be read a second time. Senator Cheriot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill by my good friend, the Senator for West Pokot, Senator Samuel Pogisho. A very important bill, which even before we delve into the merits of it, because in any case it's a very small amendment, I'd wish to call to the attention of the House that on many occasions, when presented with bills during second reading, senators suggest so many good either amendments or points of concern that they note with how the bill has been drafted. But when we are doing committee of the whole, Mr. Speaker, you just seen how we have had to drop order number 11, 12, 13, and 14, because despite being committees of the whole, so many of the things that senators raised about these particular bills are left to only either the movers or those that seconded this particular bill, or for the committee to handle. And therefore, in between that process, so many things slip within our fingers. And it's unfortunate because some of these laws come back to haunt us, especially we as a House of Senate. We are aware of all the goings on around the House of Parliament, and how some people would wish that they could easily strike out Senate, but they found that it is impossible. It remains to be the upper house, and the house that people on many occasions consider to be the house of reason. And therefore, this amendment is primarily important because I'm sure when the proper statutory act was being passed, somebody may have easily picked out or noted that the way it was drafted with just reference to the words being transmitted to the clerk without specificity to know that the House of Parliament in Kenya has two clerks. There's a clerk for National Assembly and clerk for Senate. Without that level of specificity in the bills that you are passing, then we end up finding ourselves in the kind of situations that all the senators that are here know, where laws have been passed in the National Assembly, and without the same being transmitted, and without any concurrence from the Senate, you find that they are either signed into law and they become operational. And it's unfortunate that we only have to rely on the umtatas of this world to remind us on many occasions that this particular bill was supposed to have been transmitted to the Senate, but the same was not done. And sometimes even we as senators are not aware. In Article 110, Mr. Speaker, it clearly stipulates that it is with the concurrence of you as the Speaker of Senate and the Speaker of the National Assembly before any particular bill. I do not imagine or want to believe that that law has been tested to its full limits. On many occasions, you'll find bills that are before the National Assembly, which as the Senate haven't given concurrence through our Speaker that these are not laws that ordinarily do not concern counties. Because the truth of the matter is that the day we decide to put our foot down and ask the country, tell us any matter that does not concern counties, there'll be none. That's the truth of the matter. All these issues that they are discussing, even if it's miscellaneous amendment bill that they are discussing, their application will be within counties. And therefore, if you look at many of other jurisdictions like our own, Mr. Speaker, that have got a bicameral parliament, and they have got both houses of parliament like National Assembly and this, the order is that you have both houses concurring to bills so that you can have double scrutiny of what is being proposed before the country. But somebody has mischievously thought and found a way of saying that the only laws that as a Senate you are supposed to consider are what is friendly to them and they consider to be within the ambit of counties. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I support this very specific amendment that once enacted, as has been said by Senator Haragura in his seconding notes, will now make it mandatory for us as they inspect the statutory instruments that accompany many of some of these laws. The concurrence of the House of Senate will now be felt because the clerk of Senate will have, it is now directed specifically. Nobody can mischievously hide under the law and just say, we consulted a particular clerk. It has to be the clerk of Senate. And therefore, with those very few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to say I support. Thank you.
Senator Mugeni Eric Okongo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to also support the proposed amendment to the Statutory Instruments Act. Mr. Speaker, I serve in the Committee of Delegated Legislation, and oftentimes we have had problems in terms of determining which subsidiary legislation should come before our committee and which one should go to the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, unless we as a Senate fight to reclaim our space, then we will always be overrun by the National Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, I support this bill because it is giving us an opportunity to reclaim our rightful place as senators when it comes to scrutinizing subsidiary legislations that emanate from the executive. And Mr. Speaker, if we follow the history of countries that have bicameral parliaments, like the US, there was a lot of fights between Congress and the Senate in the US before eventually Congress came to accept that Senate is the superior house. In fact, Mr. Speaker, this debate that we have had, where the National Assembly says that finance bills should not come to the Senate, these are issues that were there in the US between Congress and the Senate. And after a lot of infighting between Congress and Senate, eventually it was accepted that finance bills must be processed by the Congress and get the concurrence of the Senate. In fact, at some point in history, Mr. Speaker, the chairmanship of the Finance Committee used to alternate between Congress and the Senate. So I don't understand how somebody can make a conclusion that finance bills don't concern counties. I mean, what concerns counties more than how we disburse funds to our counties? So I think, Mr. Speaker, we as a Senate should each day, in, out, fight to ensure that we reclaim our space, that we truly represent our counties, and that any bill that affects counties must pass through the Senate. So, Mr. Speaker, once these amendments are processed, it will now be as clear as day and night that bills that are sent to the clerk of the National Assembly will go to the National Assembly, and those that are sent to the clerk of the Senate will be processed by the Senate. So this amendment is actually coming in to cure some lacuna in the law. And I think when this act was being passed, people assumed that Senate will not play any role. But having been in existence for the last 6 years, and I can confirm that from our committee we have processed a number of regulations. There is a very key and important role that the Senate should play in scrutinizing these regulations. Mr. Speaker, the other point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, is that we need to be more alert as Senate. Because I've read a number of bills that are processed by the Committee on Delegated Legislation by the National Assembly that never find their way to the Senate, which is not right. That's not the way it should be. Because once the National Assembly has made a determination on a particular regulation, they should also find their way to the Committee on Delegated Legislations of the Senate, either for concurrence or for rejection. And I want to appeal to my chairman, Pogisho, and the members of this committee to always be alert on these regulations. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this amendment because it's really one that is squarely within Article 110 of the Constitution, because it gives us more role in scrutinizing regulations that are forwarded to either the National Assembly or the Senate by the Executive. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, sir, I support.
Honorable Senators, I don't see any more interest, and therefore I want to invite the mover to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I beg to reply, and I wish to thank Senator Hargura for seconding it and articulating the impact of not having those amendments in this bill, and in terms of how it has, and he gave a real example of how it has affected the the land bill regulation. Mr. Speaker, sir, this, I just want to make a bit of comment in terms of this section was okay as passed in 2013. But what happened along this year, the delegated legislation in National Assembly moved an amendment to remove Senate. So it is not that it was not there, it was there, but they removed it deliberately. And I think the intention was to make this committee render it useless in terms of the delegated legislation in the Senate. And then in addition, maybe way forward it would have also made the other committee rendered useless, because if this one was allowed to pass. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also wish to also thank Senator Cheriot for his remarks in terms of the House, this House stamping its authority as a House to ensure that they protect their space, and by extension counties, because this House exists to protect counties. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also wish to thank Senator Omugeni for his articulation in terms of the committee deliberation and other issues, including how the struggles between USA and in terms of the two houses. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, given that our own existence as a house is being threatened all the time by different attempts by the lower house, I think we need to pass these amendments just to stamp our authority that as a house, as an upper house, that we claim our space, and by extension also protect counties. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order 61(3), I request that the putting of the question to be deferred to a later date. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you very much. Pursuant to that standing order, I would defer the putting of the question to Tuesday next week. Next order.
Order number 16, the County Law Compliance and Enforcement Bill, Senate Bills number 25 of 2018, second reading.
Senator Haneri.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for the opportunity and to state that I am very glad that finally I have an opportunity to move this bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill has been on the order paper for the last couple of months. I was worried that if I don't get an opportunity to move it today, tomorrow being day for members' motions, and next week we all know what is happening, I was not going to get an opportunity to move this bill until next session, which is next year. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the County Law Enforcement and Compliance Bill 2018 be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, I wish to state that the purpose of the legislative proposal is to establish enforcement and inspectorate units in the counties which are to be responsible for ensuring compliance with county laws. Mr. Speaker, sir, Albert Einstein once said that nothing is more destructive of respect for the government and the law of the land than passing laws which cannot be enforced. Thus, this bill comes to cure the lacuna in the law as far as county laws enforcement is concerned. I believe, Mr. Speaker, this piece of legislation is long overdue. We passed the new constitution in 2010, the new constitution that established county governments and county assemblies which were given powers to legislate. And Mr. Speaker, as a Senate, I think we slept on the job. We should have passed this bill long time ago so that the legislation that is churned through the county assemblies has a body that can ensure compliance and enforcement. Mr. Speaker, in giving some background, the establishment of a county law compliance and enforcement unit is informed by the need for officers who can be responsible for enforcing and ensuring compliance with laws enacted by the county governments. Mr. Speaker, sir, under Article 185 of the Constitution, counties have the power to make laws that are necessary for or incidental to the effective performance and exercise of the powers of the county government under the 4th schedule. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, the role of the enforcement officers within the counties is integral to the daily operations and conduct of business in the counties. Otherwise, it will be an exercise in futility where county assemblies will come up with good pieces of legislation, but with no unit to ensure that those pieces of legislations are complied with. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is therefore necessary that a national law broadly sets out the functions and expected conduct of such enforcement officers so as to ensure safety and well-being of the residents of the county and to provide an enabling environment for the conduct of business and other regulated activities at the county level. Mr. Speaker, we have left this to the county assemblies, and I don't think it is right. We need to have a standard legislative framework, standardized, and it is only the Senate that can come up with this kind of law that will see to it that we have a proper legal framework for recruitment, training, provision of code of conduct of these particular officers that we are trying to establish by this legislation. There needs to be sanity and order in the counties, Mr. Speaker. We do not want a situation where governors pick their goons, their political goons, and make them the county askaris without any code of conduct. These askaris go harassing their opponents, go harassing wananchi in the markets. We must have a proper code of conduct, and it is only the Senate that can come up with this piece of legislation. Mr. Speaker, sir, in addition, the professionalism and approach of the enforcement officers shapes community notions of the county government. Currently, reports abound of the enforcement officers and county askaris mishandling the general public. This bill, therefore, provides a legal framework for the appointment, functions, and a uniform code of conduct for the enforcement officers. Mr. Speaker, sir, before I elaborate on what each clause provides, allow me to remind this House on the milestones that have resulted into this bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, the 21st of July, 2015, that is in the last Parliament, I requested a statement under the then standing order number 45-2B concerning the operations of the county inspectorate departments in the country. At the time, there was numerous reports of human rights abuses, disorganization, impunity, and political misuse of county askaris in the newly created counties then. Mr. Speaker, the statement sought to find out if there existed a uniform code of conduct, training, disciplinary and complaints mechanism. Most importantly, I wanted to establish the legality of having inspectorate departments in the country. The statement was forwarded, Mr. Speaker, to the Council of Governors and the Office of the Attorney General, who gave responses as follows. From the Council of Governors, Mr. Speaker, the Council affirmed the fact that county government have legislative authority under Article 185 of the Constitution, and that it was deemed necessary that they establish inspectorate departments for enforcement of these legislations. Some counties inherited the inspectorate or enforcement department from the previous local government authority, especially in the case of city and municipal councils. Mr. Speaker, the Council also recognizes the need for collaboration between the national and the county governments in delivery of security services. From their response, Mr. Speaker, the Council confirmed that it had initiated discussions with the Ministry of Interior and coordination of the national government, the AG, and the stakeholders to explore ways of collaboration. Mr. Speaker, the Council concurred with the AG advisory that there is need to establish security units at the counties, either through legislation or agreement with the national government. The Council of Governors, recognizing the mandate of the Senate to protect counties, affirmed its support for legislation that will streamline enforcement units in the counties. In other words, Mr. Speaker, we have a strong nod, although we don't need it, it is within our mandate, but we have a strong nod from the Council of Governors that we must pass this legislation so that there is a standardized legal framework for establishment of these units. Mr. Speaker, sir, and from the Attorney General's office, the Attorney General indicated that Chapter 11 of the Constitution defines national security, with Article 238 outlining the principles of national security. Article 239(1) outlines the organs that undertake national security, which are the Kenya Defense Forces, the National Intelligence Service, and the National Police Service. It is, however, important to note that the bill does not seek to create an organ that provides national security. Mr. Speaker, the Attorney General pointed out that the police services is under the national government as per the 4th schedule of our 2010 Constitution. Further, Article 239(4) states that a person shall not establish a military, paramilitary, or similar organization that purpose to promote and guarantee national security, except as provided for by this Constitution or an act of parliament. This prohibition applies to county governments too. Therefore, they have no powers to establish these units on their own unless we pass this legislation. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Attorney General further intimated that Article 247 of the Constitution grants Parliament powers to enact legislation establishing other police services which must be under the supervision of the National Police Service and the command of the Inspector General of the Police. Mr. Speaker, I wish to bring this House to speed with other disciplined forces that have been established in accordance with Article 247 of the Constitution. These are the Kenya Forest Service, the Kenya Wildlife Service, the Kenya Prison Service, and the Kenya National Youth Service. However, all these units, Mr. Speaker, are administratively placed under the command of the Inspector General of Police through the amendment of the Executive Order Number 2 of 2013. Mr. Speaker, while in the long run it will be necessary to consider sharing of national security function between the national and the county governments as envisaged in the Constitution under Article 187, this bill is enacted, if enacted, will help tackle some emerging safety and security concerns in the counties and complement the police efforts. Mr. Speaker, at this point, I wish to acknowledge the ongoing police reforms that were launched by His Excellency the President on the 13th of September 2018, and appreciate the unified structure that is modeled on the administrative structure of governance that recognizes devolution. Police devolution should be the way to go, and by setting up a recognized enforcement structure in the counties, law enforcement and security will be better managed by the counties, Mr. Speaker. At this point, allow me to take the senators, Mr. Speaker, through to other jurisdictions in the world and give a brief comparative analysis. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the United States of America, an elected official known as the sheriff is in charge of enforcing the law in a county or town of the US. The role of sheriff's offices varies considerably from state to state and even from county to county. The Sheriff's Office Law Enforcement Operation Branch is responsible for providing primary law enforcement services. These services include sheriff patrols, detective services, court security, civil processes, and law enforcement records function. It is, however, important to note that the responsibility of the law enforcement in the states of America is elected through, though he serves under the governor, who is supposed to ensure procedural and proper execution of the laws. Generally, Mr. Speaker, in the US, there are federal law enforcement agencies, state law enforcement agencies, county law enforcement agencies, and municipal police departments. Mr. Speaker, the above system is not any different in the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. Jurisdictions which share the English traditions of the sheriff. It is therefore worth noting that all these jurisdictions have special law enforcement agencies for their devolved units. However, in some instances, the local law enforcement agencies are in form of devolved police powers, where each county and state has its own police services, a departure from the Kenyan situation. Mr. Speaker, this reiterates my earlier call on police devolution, which should be the way to go by setting up recognized enforcement structure in the counties to complement what this bill is seeking to establish. Mr. Speaker, in South Africa, they have the municipal police, which is a separate police force maintained by some municipalities for law enforcement. Municipal police forces are responsible for traffic policing and enforcing local bylaws within the municipality, and work in the cooperation with the South African Police Service to prevent crime and maintain public order. Municipal police forces exist in a number of major South African cities, including Cape Town and Johannesburg. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is worth noting that Section 206 of the Constitution of South Africa provides that national legislation must provide a framework for the establishment, powers, functions, and control of municipal police services. This is what we are seeking to do here, so that we have a national legislation that will form the legal framework under which various counties will be able to form their units. The point of departure with our Kenyan situation is that the South African Police Service Amendment Act 1998 allows municipalities to apply to the government of the relevant province for permission to establish a municipal police service. The provincial minister of Safety and Security may approve the application after consultation with the National Commissioner of the South African Police Service. Mr. Speaker, however, the powers and responsibilities of South African Municipal Police are more restricted than those of the South African Police Service. The three statutory functions of the municipal police services are traffic policing, enforcement of bylaws and regulations, and preventing crime. Thus, municipal police forces do not conduct criminal investigations. Mr. Speaker, sir, in summary, most jurisdictions in the world have enacted laws to establish law enforcement units for their devolved units. As noted earlier, the framework may differ, but the core function of enforcing county legislations and regulations is constant in all these units that have been established. It is therefore paramount that as a progressive country, Kenya should have a legal framework for the establishment, appointment, functions, and uniform code of conduct for the enforcement officers. Mr. Speaker, sir, coming back home, this bill is fashioned in the same way as the following acts that have provision for enforcement officers. The Standards Act that establishes the Bureau of Standards. Part 4, Section 13 of the Act provides for appointment of inspectorate, while Section 14 provides for their powers. So even the Kenya Bureau of Standards have their own unit, Mr. Speaker. Environment Management and Coordination Act, Part 10, Section 117, provides for the appointment of environmental inspectors and their powers. The Forest Conservation and Management Act of 2016, Mr. Speaker, Part 2, establishes the Kenya Forest Service and provides for its functions and powers. The Wildlife and Conservation Management Act 2013, Part 2, establishes the Kenya Wildlife Service and provides for its functions and powers. The Prisons Act, Cap 90, Part 2, establishes the Kenya Prison Services and provides for its functions. Mr. Speaker, thus allow me to take this House through the structure of the bill and indicate as follows. Mr. Speaker, Part 1 of the bill provides for preliminaries of the title, interpretations, and objects of the bill. And amongst the objects, Mr. Speaker, is to provide a framework and standards for the establishment and operation of county law compliance and enforcement units, and to regulate the conduct of county law enforcement and compliance officer. As I said earlier, we must have a standardized code of conduct for all these officers across all the counties. Part A of the bill, Mr. Speaker, is the establishment of the law enforcement and compliance units. Mr. Speaker, the bill provides for the establishment of a law enforcement and compliance unit in every county, consisting of such maximum number of officers as shall be determined from time to time by the County Public Service Board. The County Public Service Board is to be responsible for deployment, promotion, and demotion of these officers. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the bill, we have the provision for code of conduct. Mr. Speaker, how professionally the enforcement officers perform their duties will have a major impact on the image and the business environment of the county. The bill therefore sets out the code of conduct for the officers in the unit and require that they subscribe to the code of conduct. Mr. Speaker, members can go through the code of conduct, which are in the bill. Code of conduct. Excuse me, Mr. Provided for in the bill and schedule miscellaneous. And just some of this is an enforcement officer shall, in the implementation of this act or any other law, not unlawfully discriminate against any person. So we are curbing against discrimination. Exercise fairness, self-control, and tolerance. Respect all persons and their traditions, beliefs, and lifestyles if they are compatible with the rule of law. Do not to do anything which compromises or which is likely to compromise the impartiality of those who work for or on behalf of the authority. So those are just some of the provisions in the Code of Conduct. Mr. Speaker, per se, functions of the enforcement units. Mr. Speaker, the bill sets out the functions of the county law enforcement and compliance units as follows. A, ensuring the compliance and enforcement of all county laws. B, inspection for compliance with trade licenses and permits. C, ensuring legal compliance to all county revenue collection, including cess, royalties, and land rates. D, protecting and guarding the property of the county. And C, protection. E, protection of public entertainment sites, among other duties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, powers of the enforcement officers. The bill sets out the powers of the enforcement officers, which include powers to search and enter any regulated premises, require the production of inspection and examine copy of licenses, registers, records relating to regulated activities. Number C, carry out periodic inspection of all establishments undertaking regulated activities. Says any article used in the commission of an offense. Mr. Speaker, that's just amongst the powers. There are many others. They are all listed in the bills, and I hope members will get an opportunity to go through the bill. And if there are any amendments to suggest, any additions, any subtractions, we are looking forward to those proposals. Mr. Speaker, as regards to powers of arrest, the bill provides that where an officer has a reasonable ground to believe that an offense has been committed under any county law, the officer may arrest the person committing the offense. Where the offense relates to a regulated activity, the officer may arrest the proprietor of the activity, an employee of the proprietor, or any other person whom the officer reasonably believes is involved in the execution of the illegal activity. Mr. Speaker, the bill provides for the use of reasonable force to execute arrest where a person who is believed to have committed a crime under any county law resists an arrest. The draft bill further requires the county enforcement officers to present arrested persons to the nearest police stations. And therefore, we do not expect this unit to have their own cells for incarceration of offenders, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the bill further gives authority to the unit to take temporary possession of goods, vessels, and animals that are held by persons contrary to the law until such a time that the persons have complied with the law. The bill further requires an officer to sufficiently disclose his or service identity while exercising any of his or her powers under the Act. Mr. Speaker, the bill makes it unlawful for any person to erect, build, establish, or keep any structure, building, shed, kiosk, or any other structure, public or private, without approval of the county government. Mr. Speaker, if the owner and/or occupier does not demolish or obtain approval within 7 days, the county government may demolish such structures and surcharge the owner of the plot or person who has constructed the cost of demolition. Mr. Speaker, the bill provides that where a notice is to be given under the law, such notice shall be deemed to have been served if it is placed in a conspicuous place of the structure or building, served upon the owner, or served upon the occupant. Mr. Speaker, there are miscellaneous provisions. The bill makes provisions for the coordination and collaboration between the relevant county departments and state entities at the national level, including the Directorate of Public Prosecution and the Judicial Service Commission. It also gives powers to the county legislation on law enforcement and compliance and establishes a reporting system, Mr. Speaker. The bill will also require that county law enforcement officers respect the fundamental rights and freedoms of the residents of the county and allow for a conducive environment of business within the county. Mr. Speaker, finally, the bill gives an elaborate schedule on the code of conduct to be observed by the law enforcers. Specifically, it provides for duty to act impartially, calls for respectful conduct, demands for confidentiality, discourages improper motive, and encourages declaration of conflict of interest. It also calls for protection of arrested persons. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I wish to state that the bill does not delegate legislative power but county governments may delegate legislative authority to the relevant county executive committee member as may be appropriate. This bill affects powers and functions of the county government, and it is therefore a bill that concerns counties in terms of Article 110(1)(a) of the Constitution. It is, however, not a money bill within the meaning of Article 114 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, in conclusion, I am proud to have sponsored this bill. However, in sharing the joy and responsibilities of the legislative mandate of this House, there is need for this bill to be fast-tracked to help tackle the numerous challenges faced by the general public in their interaction with the county enforcement officers. The enactment of this bill will also provide a solution to the lacuna in law as to the extent of powers of enforcement officers controlled by the governor and limitations of the county askaris. I urge honorable senators to give it the due consideration it deserves and support it fully. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move and request Senator Cheriot of Kericho to second the bill. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Cheriot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance. I want to appreciate the very good thoughts and work that has been put into this bill by my elder brother and friend, the Senator for Vihiga, Senator George Aniri. Madam Speaker, the fact that we hadn't been able as a House, 6 years into devolution, to consider making such laws as is being proposed in this bill, Madam Speaker, speaks a lot about sometimes how, as Senate, we miss our priorities and do not consider matters that are extremely important to our county governments. Madam Speaker, devolution offered Kenyans an opportunity to self-government. And one of the things, if you listen keenly to Kenyans in the run-up to the 2010 referendum, is that they felt that they were not getting proper representation and proper services from the center. And therefore, it was important that we go the devolved way and ensure that each and every of our society in their own small way get to manage their affairs in a neat and better way than what was being offered previously. And therefore, that ushered in devolution into our country, and with it came many challenges. Madam Speaker, this bill proposes something very important, which I wouldn't wish to repeat the words of Senator Haniri, but will just wish to point out perhaps one or two things that I feel are extremely important were brought out in this bill, and therefore call on my colleagues to support it. Earlier on this year, Mr. Speaker, we happen to have witnessed a number of counties that organize the graduation ceremonies of what would be considered as enforcement officers. I saw different counties, Bomet do about 200, then my own county, and up to now there's a whole standoff because county government enlisted 780 young men and women, trained them in a particular village polytechnic, and therefore wanted to employ them as enforcement officers. But they don't have the legal basis for doing it. The legislative framework hadn't been availed up to this particular time. And therefore, what the County Public Service Board advised is that despite the fact that you have spent county resources, significant amounts, and ensured that training went into, that good amount of money went into
Honorable Senators, kindly consult in a manner that we can also listen to the proceedings.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, and what happened is that the County Public Service Board then advised that despite the fact that there might be established need for counties to have that specific county to have county enforcement officers, the correct and the proper way under public service management is for them to first establish, come up with an establishment, give the proposals of what are the qualifications for one to be an enforcement officer, and what are the methods that will be used for recruitment. And therefore, by and large, basically telling the county that they had put the cart before the horse, and it will be impossible to solve that quagmire as it is. Up to now, there's a standoff on each and every occasion that I've had occasion to be at the county. I keep on hearing the governor promising to employ these young people, but nothing is forthcoming. In this particular bill, Madam Speaker, it is proposed now that the County Public Service Board will be able to determine the number of county law compliance and enforcement officers required for effective performance of this unit, because it is upon them to carry out a needs assessment. I find this to be particularly important, Madam Speaker, because you do not want a governor, having been newly elected into office, to want and directly appoint their ward coordinators and all their cronies and friends under the guise of being county enforcement officers. What you need to do and what you need to establish is what is the required number, what will be the proper number of enforcement officers per county. And the County Public Service Board is well
Honorable
versed with...
Senators, kindly consult quietly.
You may want to note, Madam Speaker, that those who are leading in the disturbance in the House are the leaders of majority and minority. Madam Speaker, therefore, it is quite important, and that is why earlier on today, had we had the numbers, I wish I had known that senators were either holed up in a meeting or somewhere. I would have proposed that part of the orders which were dropped out of the order paper today be considered later, because part of the amendments that I'm making to the County Government Act is to ensure that the chairperson of a county public service board is a human resource practitioner. And one of the reasons why I'm making that proposal is to establish some of these things that are being now proposed in this bill, Madam Speaker. You need a properly trained human resource professional who will be able to look at the proposed manuals and be able to match the skill gaps with what can effectively be done. This is a field that many a times people feel that any other profession can be able to handle it, but the truth of the matter is that you need a properly trained human resource professional to understand some of these proposals, like what is now being proposed in this particular bill, Madam Speaker. And therefore, it moves on even to speak about other issues like the appointment of the officers to this particular unit and the responsible for human resource function relating to the unit, including now what will be the qualification. You know, do you want to have Form 4 level of education or post-secondary education for one to be appointed in this particular unit, and other things like the rank and that particular things of that will be important. Madam Speaker, I will quickly move on to just something that I consider to be important, because as I had said earlier, Senator Haniri has done an exemplary job, gone even into other jurisdictions and give us a proposal. By the way, I want it to be noted on record, Madam Speaker, that that is how to move a bill, where you speak and you enlighten the colleagues that care to listen of what other countries that we need to benchmark with as a country are doing about it and why you are proposing a particular thing to be done. I only have a concern, Senator Haniri, about Section 8, Part 4 of the bill, where it speaks that in the course of their work, enforcement officers, that if 48 hours under subsection 3 and end outside the ordinary court hours, perhaps maybe a time like Christmas or that kind of a thing where you have more than 48 hours and courts are still not open, or on any day that is not an ordinary court day, the enforcement officer shall report the seizure on the next court day. Sometimes this is a properly provided provision, which ordinarily no one will be opposed to. But look at what is happening in the country. Look at what DPP and DCI are doing, arresting members of the public and keeping them in custody for more than 4 or 5 days, despite the fact that the constitutional is so clear in black and white that you cannot keep a suspect in custody for more than 24 hours, unless even on a weekend. And therefore the question is, what is this? I am on record as having spoken about it, that what is this hurry about arresting people on a Saturday or on a Sunday, yet they are not a flight risk. They are not threatening anyone. Therefore, when you make this kind of a provision, it may be subject to abuse. Maybe somebody falls afoul with the governor and these enforcement officers pounce on you. They can use this particular provision. Of course, it has its own limitations, but it is one provision that needs to be used sparingly. The right to bail is a fundamental human right, and that is why under our Bill of Rights in this particular constitution, Madam Speaker, it is so well spoken of. And the fact that there is continuous abuse of that particular right is something that we need to speak about, especially knowing very well our history as a country. We are well aware of the days of detention without trial and the Nyayo House torture chambers. We are seeing it creep in.
What's the point of order, Senator?
Madam Speaker, I think you might not be able to catch, but I thought you would have seen that there were more than one member on their feet while a member was contributing to the motion.
I brought that to their attention several times, Senator, but and it's unfortunate that is the leadership of the House. So what else? You can't be on your feet before you are given an opportunity. But anyhow, what is your point of order?
Machines. My point is that even if it's the leadership which was in the, standing, I've never seen Senator James Orengo excited. Maybe because Baba was around. Could that be the reason?
That's a possibility. Senator, continue.
So it is good to note, Madam Speaker, that all this excitement that I'm seeing in the House is courtesy of Baba. For those of us who missed that opportunity, I'm sure Senator Orengo will organize for us to get to also meet him and perhaps get what he gave them so that we can equally be excited.
Yes, Senator Leader.
Yeah, I'm gladly, hearing from the member from Kericho. But I want him to clarify, does he want to meet Baba or Arab Mibey?
I have not defected, neither do I intend to, Madam Speaker. But Baba is an icon that we all admire and respect. Therefore, I'll be more than glad to meet him. By the way, I met him a few days ago, and I thought he didn't know me. But then he told Senator Murkomen that I know this young senator. I see him on Tuesdays on NTV. He hits me so hard, but I don't take offense because he's a young man. He's still learning his ways. Therefore, in a very simple way, he told me to grow up. Quite an interesting. I respect him a lot. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I was speaking about the days of detention without trial coming back into this country, courtesy of the work that is being done by the DPP mostly. And this was in relation to this particular provision, where a constitution has spoken so clearly about how long you can keep a suspect in custody without either trying them or releasing them. But we are finding it so often and frequent, as has been the case this week with the CEO of NHIF, where you're charged, and then when prosecution is told to lay the charges so that you can take a plea, they say they need a few more days to organize their case. Then you wonder, what was the hurry for the arrest? I think it's something that this House needs to properly prosecute. I urge my colleagues who sit in the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, perhaps to summon the DPP and get a better understanding of this particular issue. And therefore, this provision, there might be need for us to properly word it so that in our counties you don't end up. If trained officers who've gone through an extremely rigorous training like what our police officers go through can do that, imagine what enforcement officers who perhaps will just be taken to a village polytechnic will be able to do, can do to members of the public if they are left on their own with this kind of a provision. Section 15, Madam Speaker, is of interest to me. because it further supports what I'm saying, because it claims that, it actually states, not claim, that when an enforcement officer arrests a person, the officer shall immediately present the arrested person to the nearest police station. It is important that we state it. We had spoken earlier a few minutes ago when we were contributing to the statutory amendment law about the need for us to properly check the language that is used in the laws that you are passing. And I love the fact that it has been stated that it is immediately. Immediately does not have two meanings in the provisions of the English language. And therefore, I support that particular clause, Madam Speaker. In the list, of course, as a Senate, part of our mandate is, on many occasions, is that when we do laws and legislation, Madam Speaker, it is left to the respective 47 county assemblies to therefore further legislate and domesticate some of these provisions that we are making, and ensure that each county, for the how they want to manage their county enforcement officers, is now provided for them. And Section 17 provides for that provision, that an enforcement officer shall produce a service identity document when exercising a power under this act or any other law. Any other law, in my understanding, Madam Speaker, means the laws that will be done by the various and respective county assemblies on how they want these enforcement officers to behave, how they want to run their duties. You know, Kisumu County Assembly will be able to do this law for their enforcement officers and say there shall be set up the Kisumu County enforcement officers. They shall be dressed in, say, orange uniform. They shall prominently display their badge during all the working hours. They shall be picked from this particular lot. They can even go to the length and spread of how the county is spread out to ensure that there is no skewed appointment of officers, like what has happened now in many of our security forces, where previously it was known that where a particular commander comes from, then you'll find almost all officers of a particular unit come from that particular area. And therefore, it is left to them to properly domesticate this law and ensure that they provide the guidance on how these enforcement officers shall work. This is very important. Madam Speaker, just when you were speaking, Senator Dr. Langat here reminded me, in my own county, because we know what this non-regulation of county enforcement officers has led to in our counties, where you find these officers, because of their limited training and not being properly guided on how they are supposed to execute their role. And you see how sometimes they want to forcefully collect cess from matatus. One of them threw, I don't know if it was a spanner or those rake that they normally have, and it inflated the tires of a Nissan that they were trying to pursue. It ended up causing an accident, and two people were killed in that incident. It tells you, you have seen even in other incidents where during election and campaign time, officers end up taking a particular leaning, and they're the ones who are used even as returning officers, you know, for candidates of the party that perhaps the governor belongs to, because he's the one who employed them. Now, with this particular law, they will know that they are proper civil servants who are serving the county and nothing else. They are not serving any particular interest. These are people who will be properly uniformed, properly trained, and they shall be able to execute their duty with decorum and the dignity that comes with serving in that. Under the list of offenses, Senator Haniri, I know Clause 20 has provided that a person may be convicted of an offense under this act. But under offenses, I would wish that we specifically put the charge for officers also under the enforcement officers who commit specific crimes, you know, so that we just don't lump them up together. Let these enforcement officers know that when you go out and harass wananchi, when you are going out to arrest members of the public, there is a way you do it with a lot of respect, understanding that a suspect is not a criminal until a court of law has made a determination on what you have assessed. The fact that you have caught somebody with something you consider to be illegal, you are not yet a court of law for you to determine whether what he has is illegal and therefore he needs to be treated like a criminal or like a common person. And therefore, under the list of offenses, because we have seen on many occasions what these enforcement officers have done to members of the public. Madam Speaker, I'd request for 1.5 minutes just to conclude.
Go ahead.
Or even less. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I want to say that I support this particular proposal. I want to request my colleagues to also give it the kind of support so that we can expedite it through the ranks. I'm sure this is one particular law that will be of interest to all our 47 counties, so that they may be able to effectively carry out the duties with respect and honor that is expected of our county governments. And therefore, with those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I beg to second. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question which is that the county law compliance and enforcement bill, Senate Bills number 25 of 2018 be now read a second time. Senator Wetangula Moses.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this very important bill brought by the distinguished senator for Vihiga, which goes a long way in furtherance of strengthening devolution. Madam Speaker, if the existing laws were applied properly, probably Senator Khaniri would never have brought this bill. Under the Police Act, Madam Speaker, there is a provision for a county security board that would comprise the governor and the management of the county plus the local police and the remnants of provincial administration. But it has increasingly appeared like the police would have nothing to do with it. So we live in the existence of the violation of that law. So this law, Madam Speaker, if passed, and I urge members to pass it, comes to fill that lacuna. In the old days, Madam Speaker, there used to be what are commonly in colloquial terms called kanjo askaris. I've seen even on TV women traders crying about kanjo askaris. These kanjo askaris, Madam Speaker, are distinguished for their extreme brutality on wananchi. They are extremely cruel in the execution of their duties, and they seem to delight in a lot of pleasure in destruction of the wares of common traders. So we need some order. And this bill brings some semblance of order, but Senator Khaniri will have to fine-tune it towards the end to make sure that it serves both the enforcement team and those on whom the regulations are enforced. Because unless you balance the two, you end up creating an instrument of terror on wananchi. Madam Speaker, we have seen in the countryside that unless we do this, some governors are even turning these enforcement officers into a private militia, which they use to deal with their opponents and people who hold views contrary to what they hold. And unless we enforce the law and make the law very clear as to how the behavior of these enforcement officers is done, it will become a chaotic situation. Number one, Madam Speaker, we need to have some qualifications. I have not seen any educational qualifications for who qualifies to be an enforcement officer. At least a minimum education of probably, in the villages, even standard 7 with a good grade can do, standard 8, sorry. But Form 4 and thereabouts will even be better. Number two, Madam Speaker, they need to be strictly trained on observance of human rights and human dignity. so that they do not in their work continue violating people's rights. Number 4, Madam Speaker, they need to be trained in respect for the sanctity of property, that enforcing the law does not give anybody a license to destroy property of others. Because what I've seen, Madam Speaker, in markets, when these enforcement officers arrive, and there is some poor woman there with a trolley of bananas to probably at the end of the day sell and go home with a gorogoro of unga, they simply, instead of asking, have you paid your license for the day? If you haven't, why? If you have a good explanation, when can you pay? All they do is that they arrive, take that trolley, and splash it into the public. It is really, really bad, Madam Speaker. And you'll see the public now scrambling to help themselves on the wares of a woman who probably borrowed this money from the chama to go and buy these trading wares and make some good little money and go back and pay the loan and feed the family. She'll end up going home with nothing. And the victims of this violence are routinely women, because they're the ones who sit the whole day in the sun selling vegetables, tomatoes, bananas, roasting maize, and doing all manner of things that help the ordinary traveler and families live on. Madam Speaker, unless we control this, then devolution becomes a mirage for people. It becomes a pipe dream, because we devolved system of government to send money to the villages and to help the villagers in an organized and legal manner live a decent life. So when we have these enforcement officers, Madam Speaker, regulated in the manner that this law is proposing, it becomes orderly, it becomes good for everybody. I would want to see, Madam Speaker, a situation where these enforcement officers having a very clear structure of reporting. If you go to a big market, like for Senator Haniri in his county, Luanda market, there must be a superintendent in charge of the market on call throughout to be able to deal with emerging issues, because on a day-to-day, hour by hour, the issues are rising. There are pickpockets, wananchi want to feast on. You know, wananchi are so frustrated, Madam Speaker, that the moment they hear the word thief, they don't even ask who the thief is or what he has stolen. They all descend on anybody who is running, and they can put your life to a sudden end. So we need some superintendents there in those markets. They're genuine pickpockets, and the victims of mischief, where somebody you have disagreed simply starts shouting thief and points at you, and you can easily lose your life. So when these enforcement officers are there, they will be able to keep that kind of law and order. Another point that we need to look at, Madam Speaker, is the remuneration that these officers get. They are so lowly paid in some situations, like the police used to do, that they think that those who employed them pay them so little because they know that they take bribes to cover the shortfall. So we need to structure such that, one, they're well paid, but two, we must have very serious governance structures covering them. That anybody who goes around markets picking money from poor traders commits an offense and must be dealt with. I have seen in the section of offenses, Senator Haniri seems to think that the only offenders are the public. You have forgotten to put in offenses committed by these enforcement officers themselves, because they will routinely commit offenses against the public, and they must also be dealt with. And now that I'm talking about offenses, Madam Speaker, in clauses 18, 19, and 20, I want the proponent of the bill to also note that we are going to deal with ordinary people. A border rider resisting an arrest. A woman with bananas on the market resisting a misbehavior of an enforcement officer. An owner of what they call landis, those small informal settlements on properties that they don't even own, that's squatters, being unable to account for permits of construction. The fines that Senator Haniri is proposing are out of reach for these people. We can't impose this on wananchi. And Madam Speaker, I've been a magistrate before in my life, and when you say not exceeding 500,000, of course, the ordinary interpretation is it can be 1 shilling to 500,000. But a magistrate, an enthusiastic magistrate, thinks that since it is 500,000, it is fair to impose half of it, which still becomes 250,000. And there's nobody in the villages who can afford this kind of fine. There's nobody who can raise 500,000 for a woman whose total quantum of trading wares is 3,000 or even 1,000. Then you impose 500,000, Madam Speaker. It won't work. We're just going to fill jails with these people, because what happens when they are arrested, they're taken to the police. The police station is a toll station. Then they are taken to court. The court is another toll station. Then they are taken to prison. Prison is another toll station. And you'll find families will now, as a responsible man, you have 1 acre of land. Your wife is arrested because she was selling bananas worth 500 shillings. She has been hit with a fine of 250,000. You sell half of the little land you own to go and get out your wife. And this makes families even more destitute. So I want Senator Haniri to rethink these fines and make them as low and as affordable as the people we are going to administer this law on. Because we will find a situation where, like Madam Speaker, these days, the varying degrees of corruption, when people are taken to court, the magistrate pulls the law and tells you a fine here is $1 million. If you give me half, I'll let you go. And this happens, we all know, you are a lawyer, Madam Speaker, you know these things, I'm preaching the converted. So we should not open this window at all. Corruption is endemic in Kenya. It is everywhere. You saw the other day on TV, I don't know if the senator from West Pokot saw, a young man riding a tuk-tuk, fighting the police who are roughing him up, and the policeman, instead of exercising his powers of arrest, takes a stone and starts throwing at a suspect. Madam Speaker, you know, when you have this kind of crudity in the enforcement of the law, don't give them this window. They will hurt wananchi. So, Madam Speaker, I would also want, in fact, harsher penalties in terms of enforcement of human rights, human dignity, and respect for the rule of law. Harsher penalties should go to offending enforcement officers and not those on which the law is going to be administered. So that if an officer is found guilty of destroying the wares of a trader maliciously, or taking away money from traders in terms of bribes, those ones should be punished in accordance with the law relating to corruption, and is fairly harsh. Madam Speaker, I also would want the distinguished senator proposing this bill to deal with the issue of delegated legislation. In clause 14, he's talking about the executive committee member to publish fines to be imposed by the unit. Again, Madam Speaker, delegated legislation born out of this law must come to Parliament. I would want the senator to expand this and, in fact, inbuild small fines here that can be administered other than leaving to somebody else to go now misinterpret the law and write out things that will not be able to help the administration of the law. Madam Speaker, clause 15, the powers of arrest, we must also ensure that we make it very clear that the arresting authority and the powers to arrest must be in conformity with the law. You have already mentioned how brutal these guys normally do in the course of their duties to wananchi. So that when you want to arrest somebody, tell them which law they have violated, the nature of the violation, and you tell them, I'm giving you a note, go to the police tomorrow, or go to the police, because these are very petty offenses in the villages. It is not an offense where you find somebody is being held by the back of his trousers and is walking with suspended feet, being frogmaned to the police, Madam Speaker. It doesn't help. So that wananchi also get to know that when you transgress the law, there is a law enforcement mechanism. And the law enforcement mechanism is for good order of society, not for creating chaos and punishing people unduly. So we need to have a phraseology in clause 15 that will ensure observance of human rights as people get the law enforced on them. Madam Speaker, Clause 11 is very vague. I don't know what the proponent of the bill intended to say. An officer may impound any animal that is kept in a manner that is contrary to county law. Which county law is this, Madam Speaker? You know, when you have this kind of vague law, then you give room for abuse. Because many counties don't even have laws that regulate how to keep animals. So these fellows will start imagining that if probably you have tied your animal along the road to graze on the road reserve, it's contrary to law. And what they normally do, as you know, Madam Speaker, you come from a county where there are a lot of these things, they'll take your animals and go and sell them and share the money and go home. And that is the end of it. And the villagers are frightened stiff. They cannot go to complain. He'll just say, I'll get another animal in future. Start calling relatives, sons in Nairobi, nitumie pesa, I want to buy another animal, ile ingine imeenda. Madam Speaker, Senator Khaniri should either get rid of this or redefine it so that it makes sense. Wananchi are told in chiefs' barazas what keeping an animal contrary to law means. Are you saying that failing to dip your cows and spreading ticks is contrary to law? Which law? Are you saying that keeping macheted animals, we have the KSPC that arrest people with macheted animals? You remember Mutula Kilonzo Jr., the famous case of Amber May versus the Republic. This woman who starved her horses and she was jailed for cruelty to animals and so on in Nanyuki. Madam Speaker, and Amber May used to be my client too. Madam Speaker, clause 12. Unapproved buildings and structures. I think we need Senator Khaniri to get this also. It's a very good thing because when you look at how people are building structures in the countryside, people have a mistaken belief that if you have land touching on any road, you just wake up and build a commercial building without looking for approvals. And then as soon as he finishes building, he starts putting pressure on everybody, get me electricity, get me water, get me telephone, get me this. Eventually, he wants a police station next to him for security. There is no government in the world that can afford this. Least Kenya, with all these heavy debts and so on. So we would want, first of all, to define what structures we are talking about. Is it a market? Is it a structure that has gone through the process of the county government? So that, Madam Speaker, the senator will then obligate the county governments to roll out structures that are approved so that wananchi know. Because a vague law is bad law. So that wananchi know that, you know, if I build a house 1 meter from the road, it's against the law. If I block a passage and an easement to a property behind my property, it's against the law. If I block drainage, it's against the law. But people must know this. In fact, some of these laws ought to have been promulgated in the counties themselves. But you know, counties have also got very limited capacity in terms of, in fact, of late, it's become so embarrassing that our assemblers spend a lot of energy fighting each other, fighting their speakers, and doing all manner of things instead of legislating things that we are now obligated to legislate as a Senate. If they were doing their work properly, probably we would not be doing this. Clause 13, Madam Speaker, is good that notice is required to be given and served on the owner of the property. But 13.2 is a bit tricky, that where the owner of or occupant of a property cannot be traced, the notice shall be placed in a conspicuous place of the structured building. Sometimes, Madam Speaker, the owners of properties don't live on the property. What the senator should do is obligate owners of property, rather counties, to have a database of owners of property, including their addresses, so that when they break the law, and it's very easy, apart from big cities like Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, The rest, if you come to Bungoma and you want to take an address of every landlord, you can do so in less than a month. And keep this so that when there is an offense committed, you know who to go for. Madam Speaker, I say this because some landlords, and especially when you are imposing this kind of fines, and it's a house worth 20,000, you would rather let the house go and disappear. So we need to have a law, Madam Speaker, that says if you have committed an offense and you can't be found, then you'll be traced through an address that the county government has. It will be negligent on the part of the county government if they don't keep a database of their own people, because they have to levy taxes, they have to provide services, and you can't levy taxes from people you don't know. So ingenious county governments must be having PINs, personal identification numbers of sorts, for the people in their county. In fact, if you go to the village, Madam Speaker, if you come to my town, I can tell you literally whose property this is everywhere. So it should be quite easy to do that. So I would want Madam Speaker to Senator Haniri to look at that. All in all, Madam Speaker, this is good law. It's filling a void that doesn't exist. What I would want also Senator Haniri to include is to create at least a clause that obligates the police and the enforcement officers to have some synergy. Because when an enforcement officer arrests an offending person and takes to the police could even refuse to cooperate. We are not the ones who have arrested these people. Our cells are full. What do we do? So obligate the police also to be part and parcel of the structures of enforcement of the law that is going to bring order in the management of public business. But as I finish, Madam Speaker, what we must guard and protect is to save the ordinary man and woman in the villages from the brutality of what were commonly called Kanjo Askaris. You've seen how they destroy property in Kikomba, how they have pitched battles with the hawkers in the streets. Sometimes you may understand, but the level of violence they met on ordinary people far exceeds the offenses they presume to have been committed. So we want to see that there is order, and order must be observed by everybody through public education, public hearings. In fact, Madam Speaker, finally, Senator Haniri should obligate the county governments to carry out civic education in market centers, in towns, to tell people their do's and don'ts within the law, so that when they are operating, they know this is the yellow line, this is the amber line, this is the red line that I cannot cross. Then we can have an orderly society. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to support the bill and congratulate Senator Haniri for living to my expectations as my kid brother for bringing this wonderful bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Wambua Enoch.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to add my voice in support of this bill by Senator Haniri on the County Law Compliance and Enforcement Bill. Madam Speaker, I want to say that this country have been crying out for a bill like this, especially on the issue of the recruitment of agents to enforce county laws. Madam Speaker, I like the fact that this bill, above all, seeks to define the roles and duties of enforcement officers in the counties. And Madam Speaker, one of the things that we've been really crying out for as a country in regard to law enforcement officers in counties is one, Madam Speaker, on the recruitment of those officers. Madam Speaker, the recruitment for enforcement officers, popularly known as askaris in the counties, has largely been an exercise shrouded in a lot of secrecy. Madam Speaker, I keep laughing at a situation that I witnessed in a county in this country where a felon, a guy who has broken the law, spends a night in a police cell for petty offenses, stealing chicken. Somehow he gets out, and the following day, you meet the same person wearing a scary uniform, wielding a club, ostensibly to enforce law and order, because now he is a county askari. Madam Speaker, when Senator Aniri moved this bill, he said that it is long overdue. But I want to say that it is a bill that would not have come at a better time than this. In fact, as we speak, Madam Speaker, our national security organs are in the process of recruiting law enforcement servicemen and servicewomen. And the exercise is made public. Everybody knows who is being recruited, where they are being recruited, where they come from, where they went to school, their certificates. And I would want to see a situation like this replicated in our counties, where the people who are charged with the responsibility of keeping law and order, their recruitment is also made public. So that is not something that is done behind closed doors, only known to the person being recruited and their recruiters, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, sadly, as we speak today, a lot of these law enforcement officers in the counties have been reduced to just tools at the disposal of county executives to rain terror on people that do not think in the same line with county executives. Instead of them being enforcers of law and order, they become agents of impunity. Madam Speaker, in this bill, and I would urge the proposer of the bill, Senator Aniri, to look into ways of ensuring that beyond specifying a code of conduct for the officers, why can't we enrich this legislation with basic principles, general principles, on a service charter for all county governments in the recruitment of their law enforcement officers? And in that service charter, let us have situations where there is continuous training and assessment of the officers to conform with the exercise of proper public relations exercises. Because these people deal with the public on a daily basis. We also have a situation where these officers are trained in, as Senator Wetangula said, you would pity situations where you find the law enforcement officers treating innocent people like hardcore criminals. A woman is found on the street selling bananas, and an askari grabs the woman, throws her literally into an already moving vehicle, throws away the wares that she was selling, and that woman is taken to a cell and treated as though she has committed murder. Madam Speaker, there is need for these officers, through proper legislation, to be trained in human dignity and respect for human rights. Madam Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that this law, or this bill, when it becomes law, then it should also have provisions for proper implementation, so that then people, the ones that are being recruited as agents for keeping law and order, do not become law unto themselves. Because this happens all the time. That yes, you're being recruited through a proper process, and once then you get into office, then you want to behave as though the law begins and ends with you. Madam Speaker, with those remarks, I support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well, Senator. Senator Cherargei Samson, Senator for Nandi County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From the onset, I want to congratulate Senator George Ganiri, who is a senior member of this House and my very good neighbor, where we share a common border. And I'm happy that I'm contributing on this bill. And I must say, I want to thank Senator Ganiri for bringing such a bill. From where I sit, this is a very important bill because, as most of my colleagues have espoused, that it is timely. And these, Madam Speaker, these are legislations that we are bringing into place to try and buttress and freshen up the wheels and oil the wheels of devolution in this country. Madam Speaker, I want to, from the onset, to say in 2014, I suffered the effects of political thuggery in the name of enforcement officers in Nandi County. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, sorry, at the beginning of this year, most senators noticed that I was using extra pairs of crutches. And people were wondering, how can this young man at this age and time be working with crutches? Madam Speaker, it is because of what we call political thuggery in the name of enforcement officers. So I want to assure Senator George Kaniri, I am a clear testimony, and you are at liberty, of course with my permission, to use me as an example of what rogue enforcement officers can do to you. Up to now, I don't have the full use of my legs. Of course, I have the full use of other things. But thank God they only attacked and made my leg. They would have attacked other areas. Then it could have been challenging. So, Madam Speaker, I want to say I know, and that is why I'm a passionate defender and supporter of this bill, because you find, and I agree, I know most governors, I think with excitement of the titles,
Just a minute, Senator Mbogo, George Ochilo Ayako. What is your point of order?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Did you hear the senator talk about his being able to use other parts of his body other than his leg? Is it in order for him to say so without disclosing those other parts, Madam Speaker?
Senator, can you come clear on what you mean?
Madam Speaker, yeah, eyes, hands, now I can use now. The issue is my hands can work very well, my legs. But other important, there was a senator in this house, Senator Chionga, talk about scooping. So, Madam Speaker, the use of such areas were very important, because if they ever attacked, then I could not have an opportunity of exposing what God gave us in Genesis, that go ye and fill the world. So from there you can infer, Madam Speaker, what I mean. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I want to assure us those things, of course, if Senator, my good senator from Migori, Mbogo, Achila, Yako, Waziri, maybe he can see me in camera for further elaboration so that he can understand. But of course, we will not go into details, because the children are watching. This is a PG program, so parental guidance. This is not good to say such in the floor of the House. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you and say I have looked at the functions of the under Clause 6 and ensure compliance of all county laws. I know there are many laws that our county governments pass, and sometimes it is challenging to always pass them, and I know there is always that challenge. Madam Speaker, and I think some of these issues, especially, and I agree with most of my colleagues, they have exposed that excitement of titles by governors, huge resources, they sometimes can mutate some of these good intentions of having enforcement officers, county askaris into their own squad or militia to perpetuate their own political agenda. And Madam Speaker, you have seen in cases where their work, their modus operandi, is to ensure they frustrate their opponents. And in fact, a reported case was the other time where some of these enforcement askaris could not allow an elected leader to speak to the Wananchi because the public address system belonged to the His Excellency, the governor. So those are some of the challenges, I hope, in strict compliance. And also the issue of licensing, I know it's been a challenge, especially the issue of licensing, especially on the issues of alcohol licensing at county level. We have been having a problem. Sometimes some people deserve that they should have been given, others think that they should not have been given. So I hope by the time some of these compliance and the issue of license are being given, especially in terms of doing business at the county level, Madam Speaker, we expect it to be done in sobriety, to be done in compliance, under Urban and Cities Act, I think of 2012, Madam Speaker. The issue is nowadays we have something like towns are run like parastatals and it has boards. So we hope by the time, and I know Senator Kaniri, I was listening keenly, has said about the code of ethics or code of conduct among the enforcement officers, is that before such is done, because we don't want to appear vindictive, is that the board, the city board or town board should sanction such issues so that these enforcement officers can walk into townships, centers and shops, and when they inspect, they have full authority so that they cannot be abused or misused in any way, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on issue of legal compliance with all county revenue collection requirements, I think they are doing it, but we don't want to be overzealous. Sometimes, the fight that comes with paying sales, royalties, and run rates. I know, for example, in Nandi, we have a problem where sales has not been paid for some time, but these matters should be given to the courts of law and ensure by the time, and I think they have been doing their work when you work. But last week, Madam Speaker, when we were in Mombasa for Kenya private sector lands, and some of the concerns from the private sector, especially on this, the collection of cess and royalties, Madam Speaker, and land rates, let's not even land rates, that when you are coming maybe from Baringo, you get a revenue collection point as you get into Elgeyo Marakwet, just Elgeyo Marakwet County, just around 5 kilometers from the border, you get another collection point. When you are getting into Wasingishu from Elgeyo Marakwet, you get another one. So there is a concern, and I hope this is an issue. I know there is a law that governs these regulations, but we should be relooking on how that we don't appear that we are overtaxing or we are not creating a good business environment for our people. And I think they are doing it at the moment. On the issue of protecting the public property, I think this is very important, and I want to thank the mover that during the transition period, when you look at transitional TA, led by somebody by, I think, Wamwangi, or somebody by then, yes, Wamwangi, there is a lot of unaccounted assets and liabilities. It is because when counties took over, there was no unit, as Senator Kaniri is proposing, to guard and protect these assets that belong to the counties. And in fact, in one instance, one of our tractors in Nandi County disappeared. The next time we got it in the middle of a tea farm, that all spare parts had been taken. No one could account for the tractors, for collection lorries, for anything that belonged to the county governments, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I agree that even when there is change, I know we are in the second generation of governors. Even if there is change, some people can become mischievous and decide to cut away property that belongs to the public. But when we have a synchronized system that gets a single command, that the agenda is to protect, at least we can hold somebody to accountability. And that is why even Senator Wamatangi's bill on the issue of assumption of office by the governor. In fact, at that point, we are saying when you are declaring everything that you have left in office. And I think when such unit comes into place, it will assist that part of the law also, such that if something disappears, we can come and held accountable to a particular people.
Say that the governor who is bitter after losing, I know losing an election is not an easy thing. I can see my colleagues are looking at me as if I have not lost an election. I have lost twice, Madam Speaker, for the record of this House. So I know how painful it is to lose an election. So sometimes somebody might feel that he wants to destroy, he wants to lose, to destroy everything and what have you. So I think this one, I agree passionately with it, that we need to protect our issues and ensure, let me rush because I know most of my colleagues would want to contribute. Therefore, the property, protection of the property, Madam Speaker, I agree with you that we need a unit. Say that if I go and, for example, in my county, a neighboring county of Wazingishu, there are sometimes the tires disappear that belong to graders. Sometimes that are being used. So it is good if we can go and get and ask somebody who is in charge what happened in guarding of the property. And I think it will be the interest of the Kenyans to ensure that. Clause 8, where an enforcement officer has been reasonable grounds to suspect that any property has been. And I agree with this, that you need, any other law enforcement may make an ex parte application to the relevant court for an order to seize that property and for other relevant order. And I think my good Senator Professor Kabaka, senior counsel and a renowned scholar, would agree that we need to protect the human rights, that the right to property is so sacred. Professor Kabaka is so sacred that I don't know what professor is shouting behind me. Madam Speaker, you need to protect me. Senator Professor Christopher Langat, a former don in Moi University. What I am saying is that we need to protect the right to property that is constitutionally provided. Even that trolley that belongs to Sukuma Wiki or tomatoes, you cannot just, nowadays, Madam Speaker, just county askaris just descend on helpless women alongside, and they tow their clothes, they cut away their mangoes, they take away their Sukuma Wiki or kales, they take away their trolleys, they just destroy their property. And they have so much power that even the president of this country cannot have. They just walk into your house and decide that they need to take out.
Sorry for interruption, Senator. Senator Langat, what is the
Yeah, I
point
just
of
want to
order?
confirm, Madam Speaker, if it is in order for the senator from Nandi to satirically call us names, professors, titles that we've not earned, kindly, just keep quiet. Just kindly correct the situation, Madam Speaker. I'm Dr. Langat, not professor. And I'm not aware when Kabaka became a professor. So that can be clarified also, so that we may refer to him officially. Thank you.
Senator, can you come clear on those big titles you are conferring on honorable members? They actually are not interested at all.
Yes.
So,
thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Langat is refusing the blessings. I come from where the Talai that can see the future. So I thought, he taught me. So I thought with time you earn papers and you upgrade, you go from doctor to professor. But now he's declining the blessings, and I know he's a man of God. So maybe he's still consulting the God on the way forward. But I apologize. It should have been Dr. My apologies, Speaker, for that oversight. It should be Dr. Christopher Langat. So, Madam Speaker, as I was saying, the right to property is so sacred that should not be taken. And that is why when you walk, just count your carries, just use what we call bush tactics that were used before when you were fighting colonialists. They just screech to all, come down, they take everything. It borders to robbery with violence. And I like this part, and I look at clause 8, and I'm happy about it. Say that even if they come and inspect your premises, and they get something that is there illegally, they should go to court of law and get an order so that it becomes, Madam Speaker, this country is a country of law and order. And therefore, I thank Senator Khaniri for looking into that we need a court order before effecting. And I know, although there is a perception in this country that people do not respect the court orders, but I want to assure that I hope the county governments will respect this, so that before they chase our women around, our young people who are trying to make a living, those people should be coming down. They should be just coming and ask, have you complied? Have you paid? The way Senator Wetangula said, where is your license and what have you, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, you can add me one more minute so that I canvass on clause 9.
You are still within the 1 minute. Just
Okay,
continue.
thank you. You are my neighbor and you are my good friend. So add me more minute. Where property, preservation and destruction of seized property. Madam Speaker, finally, let me just canvass so that I allow my colleagues in the interest of time. I agree. When we have been practicing law where I was and even in this town, these people are mischievous. They take away your property. They go and re-steal it. After, of course, taking forcibly, they re-steal it. And then when they come to court, they say that property was destroyed or it disappeared. They can't account for it. We need an account. And I agree when they say preservation or destruction of seized property, there should be a procedure. Say that when you appear in a court of law, they should tell you where is your property. Because these people are taking it forcibly. They go and cook the same, they go and take away those tomatoes and eat in their supper. Or even they carry away and they tell you those things disappeared. And that is why, in fact, nowadays it is more safer to park your property even in a petrol station than in an enforcement place. Like even I was shocked the other day, there was an accident and there was a rundown case we were doing. And then you go to a police station, the tires of a car have disappeared. So I agree with this clause 9. I know it will ensure, say that if you are taken and you are fined, you can get back your property. These are poor people. For heaven's sake, and I think, Madam Speaker, this county enforcement, the county law compliance and enforcement bill is a good thing that will happen to these county governments. It will assist to ensure that we oil the way devolution works in this country. And I hope it will put a stop to where the governors are misuse or abusing this to create a militia, to intimidate some of us, to intimidate their opponents, and try and being mischievous. I hope with a single national legislation, it will ensure that we bring into the focus. So I want to thank Senator Khaniri and call upon our colleagues that let us ensure this bill is canvassed immediately and we pass it and proceed to the next level so that our people at the ground level, the mama mboga, the boda, and any other small-time business person at county level across 47 will have that joy of working in a good and safe environment. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. It's also good for us to clarify that we are always in a learning process. So if you see the yellow line, does not mean that your time is up, but rather that you should be trying to wind up. Senator Gertrude Musoruve.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Gertrude Musoruve. Now, Madam Speaker.
What did I say? Senator Gertrude Musoruve. Yes. Musoruve?
Yeah, Musoruve.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't hear it clearly.
Okay, fine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you also for giving me an opportunity to also add my voice to this debate. And Madam Speaker, I just want to thank the Senator of Vihiga, Senator Khaniri, for coming up with this bill. Madam Speaker, this is a bill that is actually speaking to all of us, and this is a bill that is speaking to all counties. Madam Speaker, sometimes, I remember at one point I was in Nairobi some years back, and I just saw people running here and there, and I wondered what was happening. And there was a lot of panic in the city around where I was, around the vicinity. Then, Madam Speaker, from nowhere, I saw women being bundled in vehicles, and there was a lot of disorder, Madam Speaker. What was happening is that the city askaris were actually running after some vendors. Madam Speaker, this law is going to bring order in their counties so that even when the law enforcers are working, they're working in an orderly manner. so that even when they're working, it does not mean that everybody else must be part of the work that they're doing, Madam Speaker. I want to say, Madam Speaker, that there's need for managing city askaris, and this bill is going to help manage the way they behave with regard to executing their duties. There are instances, Madam Speaker, when city askaris can really take a very amine approach when it comes to delivering their services or when it comes to executing their duties. There are instances when they just bundle people in their vehicles. They pick one person, he has done an offense, passers-by are not aware of what is happening, people are screaming all over, and they bundle people in vehicles. And Madam Speaker, sometimes the way they bundle these people, the vendors in the vehicle, you can really sympathize. I've seen a situation where even someone with a disability was bundled minus his wheelchair, Madam Speaker. First, he was bundled in the vehicle. Then, his wheelchair followed, Madam Speaker. It is very unconstitutional, it is feelingless, and it is very inhuman. And there's need for a law that is going to ensure that city askaris, even as they do their mandated duty, they do it with a lot of decency, they do it with a lot of respect for the common man, because it is constitutional that people need to be respected and people need to be treated with respect. Even persons with disabilities need to be treated with respect. And even this bill, Madam Speaker, is speaking to that city askaris need to be keen about special needs even when they are doing their work, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have seen also where the common man, especially women, go through harrowing moments. You find a woman is there selling her vegetables, selling her fruits, and from nowhere the city askaris come. They do not sometimes say a word. They just take the vegetables, they throw them all over, they throw the oranges all over, they throw bananas all over. And Madam Speaker, this is a woman who has decided that she will not look for alternative ways of getting money, but she look for legitimate ways of getting money for the purpose of feeding her family, for the purpose of ensuring that her family has shelter, food, and clothing. And Madam Speaker, this...
On this very important county law compliance, I want to congratulate Senator Kaniri from bringing this particular bill to this particular house. First, I want to emphasize on the importance of this particular bill, Madam Speaker, that in various counties in our country, they have different kind of law enforcement officers, ranging, as it was said by one of our colleagues, Senator from Migori, that they have different names that actually do not, names which are not in line with their functions. I want to say that it's my suggestion that to create uniformity among these particular law enforcement officers who have been messed up by several people, particularly the governors. I saw in the last regime during campaigns, this particular group of people were abused so much in an attempt to protect their governors. And by extension, they were thinking that they were protecting their jobs. We saw a lot of destruction, abuse of human rights coming from these particular people. And I want to say that, I want to suggest, Madam Speaker, that starting from the name, if it would be possible, all of them be regarded with one name. Like in the case of police, we have Kenya Police all over the country. In case of KDF, so it's my suggestion that all the counties, law enforcement officers be given one name. Number two, it's also my suggestion, Madam Speaker, that their training becomes uniform. I've seen some counties training some of them for 2 months, some 3 months. And the only work that they are trained to do is marching. Other things to do with basic law, arresting people and the rest, does not exist. So I want to say, Madam Speaker, that a curriculum be proposed on training these particular people to create uniform training, and by extension also, uniformity be created when it comes to their function, their roles, the extent and the limits of their roles. Otherwise, they have become, in my place, they used to call them governors, bulldozers or what, I don't know. So I would like to suggest, Madam Speaker, that a proper curriculum be put in place to create uniformity in their training. And then a legal framework, also as it has been suggested in this particular bill, be put in practice so that these people may know their limitations. Some of them have overlapped and taken over from the assistant chiefs. Some of them are taking the role of the police. Some of them are doing something so brutally, as the Senator Kericho was saying. We have witnessed twice 2 cases in Kericho, where these people, as they were chasing a matatu, the policemen who knows the law were trying to actually assist them to do the right thing. But they chased a matatu, and then the matatu took off. They threw that particular wreck full of nails, puncturing a matatu and a Nissan, and causing terrible accident. In that case, 2 people, including one of the students of, I think it was Kisii University, died. So I want to say that this bill is very important, Madam Speaker, because it will create some code of regulation, a framework for training these people, framework for create even their limits of what they're supposed to do. And I would like also to suggest that as far as the recruitment is concerned, transparency in various countries does not exist. They are just recruited. Who are the chief campaigners of the government? And those are the people who are qualified. Nothing else, nothing more. So from the onset, their work is to defend the government. Nothing else. So I want to say that framework on recruitment or policies on recruitment must be put in place, including their qualification, and even to create some uniformity, they should be selected from various wards and be subjected to thorough recruitment process so that they may qualify, and even when they are working, they will not be non-partial. And I want also to say that remuneration of these people. In the county that I come from, it's very interesting. These people are remunerated better than the teachers of ECDE. They are given better salaries. I hear they are earning, the teachers are earning something like 10,000, but these particular scaries are earning, their earnings varies from 20 to 30,000. And they have really given people a lot of headache. You can hear some saying, what is the need of education? If a whole teacher was completed degree in childhood education or diploma, is earning less than an askari. And I want to say that their jurisdiction must be drawn very clearly. What are the work of these people? Where are they supposed to work? You find them in state, you find others in the village chasing up and down, those local brewers, others, they are very terrible. So actually, it is high time that this bill come to life to regulate and put systems concerning the recruitment and placement and professionalism of these people takes place. So I stand here, Madam Speaker, to support and congratulate Senator Kaniri from being visionary and insightful to the extent that he was able to see what most of the people could not and brought for this particular bill. I support this bill, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Kabaka Boniface Mutinda.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving this opportunity. I've sat here waiting. It's almost time. I won't take much of the time like my colleagues have done, but I wish to also contribute to this important bill that has been promoted or initiated by the distinguished senator for Vihiga, Senator Haniri. Like many have said before, this is a very important bill which I support. And again, I won't say what the senator, distinguished senator for Migori has said, which is his constitutional right, that he doesn't support. But I felt that indeed the reasons or the objectives for which the distinguished senator for Vihiga brought this bill was for the very reason that Senator for Migori, Wakili Chilo Ayako, should rather, contribute in terms of seeking amendment so that we can, accommodate his feelings or his sentiments rather than just reject it. If we reject it, then we won't go, we'll be going round the circles. Having said that, I wish to state that indeed the character of most, I won't say all of them, most of these scurries at the county level is wanting. It is akin to the French Revolution of 1789 when we had the Reign of Terror. Of course, the problem is not the Askaris, as it were, or the militia group, in quotes, but the problem is the intention of individuals like governors when they want to act mischievous. And therefore, that is why we are saying there's a need to fashion or to improve on the content of this important bill to streamline, the ethical conduct for these counter-scaries, such that if they are going to breach any law established, indeed they are not above the law, they will be punished. Madam Speaker, these askaris, especially in Nairobi, they are known to be notorious, especially at night. They are known to harass even women. When they find women on streets, they just sweep them and start calling them prostitutes. And we have seen from the TV clips the way they mishandle women, and yet these are their sisters. And we are saying that is a total violation of the Constitution provisions on the dignity of Kenyan persons, and they should be prosecuted for that. And again, they are known to mishandle people, and people are physically challenged. Indeed, that is a point which I cannot overemphasize, as the same has been put very well by Senator Musuruve, Dr. Musuruve. But Kenyans are very sad when we see such events happening. Madam Speaker, a lot has been touched on how these persons are supposed to enforce the regulations or even the bylaws of the counties. But we are saying at the end of the day, the buck stops with the governor. The governors, from time to time, should hold meetings with his directorate of inspectorates and have these people trained from time to time and that they will stand to be surcharged for any properties which they damage of the citizens, and also they should also stand to get sacked. To summarize my submission this afternoon, Madam Speaker, I would say that in this country, we don't have the shortage of personnel who can handle the county inspectorate. We have very well disciplined youth known as National Youth Service. I was, and among others here, Achila Yako is here, and others, we are lucky to have joined the pre-university National Youth Service training, and we know the kind of discipline which goes on there. And indeed, we know we have over 10,000 of these young, hardworking and brilliant men and women who can be recruited and take position of the city as carries, because they are known to be well behaved, and they are known also to respect human dignity. Madam Speaker, I stand to support this important bill, of course with certain modifications as they have been suggested by various senators who spoke before me. Thank you.
Senators, I do not see any more interest on this bill. May I now call upon the mover to reply? Senator Kabaka.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the distinguished senator for Vihiga, Senator Aniri, I'm sitting in for him for having rushed. I understand he's traveling, and he's requested me to respond and reply to this important bill. First of all, I wish to thank all the senators who have contributed in support and also in dissent of this bill, starting with Senators Cheriot, who seconded this bill, Senators Wetangula, Senator Wambua, Senators Cherengai, Senator Dr. Musuruve, Senator Dr. Langat, and of course, myself. I'm not blowing my trumpet. I wish, on behalf of the distinguished senator for Vihiga, to thank all of them for their very inside contribution toward this bill. And I wish to state that the good senator will try to incorporate all these important suggestions given by these distinguished senators. However, I wish also to add that a lot need to be done, a lot of panel beating need to be done, especially during the third reading, where all the concerns of these senators, without leaving all the donkey work to the state senator, even
Sorry,
the
Honorable Senator, where panel beating implies
perfection, we need to perfect the imperfection in the bill as suggested, Madam Speaker. And I'm saying that all these other senators also they will have another chance to interrogate this bill deeper and at length during the third reading. And I'm sure all those suggestions will be well catered for. And also, I also need to reiterate what I've stated in my contribution, that the voice of dissent by the distinguished senator for Migori, Senator Ochilo Ayako, also is important, but in this regard, yes, In this regard, Madam Speaker, the said Senator from Migori, suggestions which he gave actually are exactly the reason why this bill was initiated in the first place. So though that is constitutional right to dissent, indeed I posit and I do submit that his suggestions will also be taken in consideration. Madam Speaker, as I went up, I refer to invoke the standing order number 61, subsection 3, and request that you defer putting of the question to another date. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, we'll defer the putting of the question to next week, anytime next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and as it will be listed in the order paper. Next order.
Order number 17, the County Early Childhood Education Bill, Senate Bills number 26 of 2018, second reading.
Senator Langat.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to propose that this particular bill on the county early childhood education be given a second reading. The relevant articles of the Constitution in support of the enactment of this bill, Madam Speaker, includes the following. Article 1 of the Constitution, 3, which deals with devolution and access to the services of...
Honorable Senator, I think you've done it wrongly. Can you do it correctly? That I now beg to move, and then you read them all.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me this time to actually ask that you allow me to move this particular bill for the second reading. It's correct now? Thank you. The relevant articles of the Constitution in support of the enactment of this bill includes the following, Madam Speaker. Article 6, 3, which deals with devolution and access to services, states very clearly that a national state organ shall ensure reasonable access to its services in all parts of the Republic so far as it is appropriate to do so, having regard to the nature of the service. Another article in support of this, I'll summarize, Madam Speaker, is Article 174, C, F, G, and H of the Constitution, which deals with the objects of devolution. The next also is number 3, is Article 186, 1 and 4, which deals with the function and the powers of the county governments. In sub-article 1 of Article 186 of the Constitution, it provides, except as otherwise provided by this Constitution, the functions and the powers of the national government and the county government, respectively, are as set out in the fourth schedule. Sub-article 4 further provides for a greater certainty of the Parliament to legislate for the Republic on any matter. And I want to state, Madam Speaker, that this particular bill is very important. As far as the current situation is concerned, the position is as follows. No legislative framework currently, especially regulating early childhood education in Kenya. The private sector also seems to have monopolized the provision of early childhood education in the country. This is despite the fact that public education caters for 90% of the Kenya primary and secondary education going children. The Basic Education Act 2013 focuses on primary and secondary education and provides very little regulation for the crucial foundation needed to ensure the success of education sector. There is therefore need to provide a robust legislation framework for the legislation of early childhood education to ensure the quality, efficiency, and uniformity of standards in the sector. so that all the children going on to primary schools are relatively at par in all counties. I want to state also in conjunction to this, Madam Speaker, that it has made it very hard for this House to do the oversight work on issues to do with early childhood education, which is a devolved function in our counties because of the absence of an effective framework that guides an oversight of the same. The objectives of this bill includes the following. The principal object of the bill is to provide a framework for the establishment of a comprehensive early childhood development and education system by the government, in line with the function as set out under the 4th schedule to the Constitution. The bill also seeks to provide a framework for the establishment of the infrastructure necessary to support the provision of quality early childhood education. It further seeks to provide a framework for the establishment of appropriate early childhood care and education system, including the implementation of program models, standards, and curriculum based on research and best practices. The bill also seeks to foster partnership between the national government, county government, private practitioners, and other relevant stakeholders with an interest on expertise in early childhood care and education. The major provision of this particular bill, Madam Speaker, includes the following. The bill specifically sets out the right of the child to education, and it imposes duties on the parents or guardians of the child, as well as head teachers of the early childhood education centers to ensure that children attend early childhood education centers. The bill also poses obligation on national and county governments to put in place the necessary strategies, plans, and structures and mechanisms that would ensure that the right to early childhood education is achieved. The bill provides also for the manner in which early childhood education centers shall be established and the process of registration of such centers. Currently, Madam Speaker, such particular process for registration and monitoring does not exist. This bill also imposes a number of requirements for registration. Currently, anybody can start early childhood center anywhere. There is no proper structure or framework that can guide the registration and establishment of these particular very important centers for the foundation of education and life for our children. The bill also provides for the establishment of mobile early childhood education schools, which are also required to undergo a registration process akin to that of permanent early childhood education centers, albeit with few modifications. The bill also provides for the management of early childhood education centers by boards of management. Early childhood education center is also expected to have its own separate board of management from those of other education centers like in primary and secondary school. The reason for this is that early childhood education centers have their own unique needs, which tend to be overshadowed by those of primary schools and often overlooked or ignored. It also provides for establishment of parent-teachers association in each education center. The bill takes into account that the fact that public early childhood education centers may be sponsored by private persons or religious institutions, but provides that such sponsors should not influence the curriculum to be administered or in any way compromise the quality of education to be administered. The bill calls on to provide for administration of early childhood education system in the county, including the manner in which curriculum is to be administered in early childhood education centers. The bill also provides for free admission into public early childhood education centers. The bill sets the age of admission into an education center as 3 years of age and not more than 6 years. It provides that the school may use child birth certificates or immunization cards to determine the age. The bill also prohibits the administration of exams for purposes of admission into early childhood education centers. The bill also imposes on application on every early childhood education center administering or intending to administer a foreign curriculum to apply and to obtain accreditation from the respective county education board under Section 17 of Basic Education Act. The bill sets out the application and evaluation process and circumstances under which such accreditation may be revoked. The bill further provides for the establishment of Early Childhood Quality Assurance Committee in each county, which is to be responsible for implementation and ensuring adherence to the standards and guidelines on quality assurance development by Education Standard and Quality Assurance Council established under the Section 64 of the Basic Education Act. The bill also, Madam Speaker, provides for the safety and protection of children in education centers by imposing on application and the Board of Management in each education center to ensure that the education centers meets the requirements of the safety and health regulation, that the environment is safe and secure for learning. And I want to say that I've just summarized, otherwise the importance of this bill cannot be underestimated. In fact, our counties currently are running different programs. Teachers in early childhood education centers, Madam Speakers, have got different names. Some counties call them caretakers, some call them different names. So this bill will provide a framework for the employment, remuneration, and professional development of teachers in early childhood education, including a structure of how they will be paid or how they will be remunerated, professionally developed, and even promoted. So I would like to say this bill, also, Madam Speaker, had gone to a higher level, but it was overtaken by events during election. Otherwise, it could have been enacted to become an act of parliament. I want to say that this bill is actually very important, and most of the counties are waiting for it so that it may enable the counties to proceed and to continue providing early childhood education effectively and systematically. I want to move this bill and ask Professor Sam Ongeri to second it, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Ongeri.
Madam Speaker, I want to second this bill because I believe it lays the foundation upon which we should be able to get our educational system running. The early childhood education is the one which has been most abused and mishandled. You are talking about children at the age of 4 and 5 years. In fact, some of them from 3 to 5 years. And unless we have an organized system of handling these children, it's going to make a mockery of the free primary education, later on leading to free secondary education, because the foundation would have been very faulty. The foundation would have been laid on awkward premise, and therefore people will not be in a position to translate these children into gainful education. And therefore, right from the onset, because the Constitution, Article 53 of our Constitution, gives the right to a child to have a name and a nationality. And that can only happen if they are in well-established centers, because it's one way of doing the enumeration of these children. It also, that article gives a right to a child to free education, compulsory education. That article also gives a right to a child to health and other related facilities, and nutrition and other related facilities. And therefore, you will see where I'm coming from, Madam Speaker, that if we are going to establish the early childhood daycare centers or centers, then they must have all those ingredients that are required for the growth of that child. I think we should appreciate one factor, that this will be during the most captive period of developmental milestones in these children. And if we do not do anything more positive, and I think our mothers know it very well, that this is the time you are trying to remove the child from the family settings to a daycare center where they're going to socially and physically associate with themselves with the other children within the community. Just like the concerns of parents are that our children should be in a safe and secure environment, this bill goes to a greater length in prescribing the type of the center that we must put up in this ECD level, at the ECD level, how they should be built, because they should not be built in the same model as we do with the primary education system. There should be safety in terms of play, how the children are running around, so the type of objects that are being left around may be very injurious to the children in that surrounding. And therefore, the bill goes to a great extent in the establishment of this center, that people must be very careful that these centers are properly established. When this center is established, there will be breaks for small little refreshment and meals. And therefore, the environment, there must be water, there must be clean toilets. Otherwise, you create a place where you'll get all forms of diseases. Instead of children gaining in that association, in the daycare center, they will be sending diseases to their homes, and I don't think we'll be able to make parents happy. So it's a sanitation, public health, and the safety and surroundings are very critical in the management of these children. There's also another element that we must consider in this bill, and that's the element these children must be culturally developed, because they have been brought up in a particular culture. They must be emotionally involved in terms of the language that they are going to use. You remember, we have said in the bill that the best medium of instruction may be obviously the mother tongue. But there are certain differences, particularly in the urban centers, where you have multinationality, and therefore no one single language may be able to fit in. But I think in most of our daycare concert, it will vary from station to station, that we need to be able to capture this element so that there is both the culture that develops around the surroundings of that area and the language that is important, and of course, the development itself. The other element that this bill seeks to do is to harmonize the curriculum development. That's why we took great time and energy to speak to the curriculum that should be able to be taught in these early childhood centers. We have worked alongside with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, KICD, and they have been able to provide insights on how this curriculum will be developed, because this is the time when the children start learning, vocalizing various areas, trying to associate objects with what they are seeing and the names of those objects, trying to associate characters with the type of things they are seeing with those characters, trying to mentally differentiate between a grown-up person and a non-grown-up person. And it's a very, if I would say again from a medical profession, that the brain growth of a child, the potential of a brain growth of a child occurs in the first 6 months. In fact, the head circumference attains its maturity at almost 80% head circumference, because if you see when the child is growing, is the head that grows faster than any other thing to be able to accommodate the brain. And within the brain, you have the cells that will now start developing and being able to associate itself memory, pleasant things that come, dangerous things that come. And therefore, the curriculum has taken into account these elements. Then we are now saying that since this is going to be streamlined and being connected with free primary education, one of the biggest headaches that we have today is what is going to happen to our current primary schools, because most of the ECDs are in those places. We don't want those ECDs places. If they must be connected with the primary school, then the format and the area in which they are located must be clearly defined. Children like playing. That's their pleasure. And the early playing, that's the area where they will always be very effective in playing. And therefore, you must provide a variety of toys and items for children to play with, because that's the only way they enjoy that altitude learning. Don't go in for serious businesses. You must diversify their minds. You must be able to create a favorable environment for them to be able to say, yes, I think we've done the right thing and everything is well. So I just wanted to say that apart from the right to early childhood education, we have provided the methodology on the registration of these items. And that we have also provided that there will be management of early childhood centers. I've spoken very extensively, and that the administration of the early childhood center is critical to the success of this. There may be other private sectors who may want to establish the early childhood centers. The method of accreditation must be critical, and obviously, at the end of it all, the quality assurance, both in terms of the building structures, in terms of the curriculum, in the terms of the methodology, must be clear. And because I don't want to dilate this, I would have talked at great length on what we should do with this early childhood center. We commend that the rest of the senators who will be seconding this may do so with pleasure. I beg to move, I beg to second and support this bill. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I now put the question. I now propose the question, which is that the County Early Childhood Education Bill, Senate Bills number 26 of 2018, be now read a second time. Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m., time to interrupt the business of the House. The Senate, therefore, stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 29th November, 2018 at 2:30 p.m.